Chapter 1971. Although he didn't know who had killed his embodiment, as long as the embodiment and the embodiment weren't isolated, they were still connected. This connection had nothing to do with distance. After raging for a while, He Yun frowned and fell into deep thought, recalling what had happened to his embodiment before the incident. The 9 prefectures, which had suddenly disappeared after the earth-shattering battle 10,000 years ago, was now in an extremely remote galaxy. If he hadn't known about this, it wouldn't have mattered. But now that he knew, how could He Yun let it go? His embodiment had clearly checked carefully that the 9 prefectures was now an extremely ordinary large realm. There were only constellations in the realm, not even a Yu Yao. How could he have been killed? The only one who could kill Rizhao was Rizhao. And the embodiment's strength wasn't something an ordinary Rizhao could deal with. Therefore, there was definitely more than one Rizhao expert hidden in the 9 prefectures. Sure enough, even after 10,000 years, one could not underestimate this domain in the slightest. He wouldn't let the embodiment's death go easily, not to mention that the 9 prefectures involved the supreme treasure, the Dao Tree. From the looks of it, he would have to ask for help and use a lot of connections. In addition, he also had to consider the possibility that the Dao Tree's inheritance had already been obtained. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered something that Yuan Du had mentioned to his embodiment. Lu Yi of the 3 World Islands' cultivation progress was extremely fast. It was obvious that he had a great opportunity. Previously, he didn't know that Lu Yi was from the 9 prefectures, so he didn't think too much about it. But now that he combined the information he had obtained, this Lu Yi wasn't. He Yun's eyes flashed and his spirit was shaken. If that was the case, then there was no need to go to the 9 prefectures. He just had to find a way to deal with Lu Yi in the Wanxiang Sea. No, that Lu Yi was now in the 9 prefectures, so he couldn't let the 9 prefectures go. Many thoughts flashed through He Yun's mind, and he quickly came up with a vague plan. No one knew if that great calamity would come, or when it would come. At his level of cultivation, he was already making preparations for the future. And if he could obtain the Dao Tree's inheritance, he would have more power to protect himself when the catastrophe came. No matter what, this was a starry sky treasure. Only a starry sky treasure could play a role in the catastrophe that swept across the starry sky. In the 9 prefectures, the scene created by the Azura Field treasure was hidden and isolated. Lu Yi thanked Chen Xianhai and the others and sent them back to Mount Fengzuan with his eyes. Only then did he leisurely make his way to the Guardian Hall. Lu Yi didn't recognize the Constellation Master guarding this place. He should have been promoted in the past 2 years. Lu Yi didn't know why his fate was so bad that he was assigned to guard this place. Lu Yi didn't know him, but he knew Lu Yi, so he greeted him respectfully. With the improvement of his cultivation, his status in the 9 regions had become higher and higher. In terms of age, perhaps many cultivators of the older generation were older than him, but in terms of contribution to the 9 regions, no one could compare to him. There was no one in the cultivation world who didn't know that the current prosperity of the 9 regions was due to Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect. Even the Jade Blood Sect had become one of the top sects in the 9 continents, and no one dared to underestimate them. After exchanging a few simple words with the Guardian, an order was quickly sent out from the Guardian Hall. Through the layers of cultivators, it was quickly transmitted to various places. On the Wuxia continent, a small team of 4 people was searching for traces of the corpse race. The few people in the team were only in the True Lake realm, and the leader was a handsome young man. He wore a white robe and had a long saber at his waist. He was obviously a weapon cultivator. Due to Lu Ye's influence, the number of weapon cultivators in the 9 regions had increased greatly in recent years, especially those who used sabers. Countless young people were imitating his style. This young man was undoubtedly one of them. After searching for 3 days, we only found a few lone corpse race members. It's getting harder and harder to earn merits. In the team, a woman dressed as a spell cultivator sighed. It had been some years since the 9 regions and the Wuxia continent established a connection. The entire Wuxia continent was no longer a place where the corpse race ran rampant. With the continuous hunting of cultivators, the number of corpse race members decreased. Today, earning merits in the Wuxia continent had become a more difficult task. It mainly depended on luck. If one was lucky, they might encounter a few corpse race members, but if one was unlucky, they might not even see one in a few days. It was considered good for them to encounter a few lone corpse race members in 3 days. Yes, this efficiency is not as good as returning to the 9 regions to meditate and cultivate. Another body cultivator added. As the foundation of the 9 regions continued to increase, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within the borders gradually became richer. Although most of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had been stored by Little 9, it was impossible for there not to be any spiritual chi of heaven and earth within the borders. Compared to when Lu Yi was cultivating, the cultivation environment within the 9 regions was many times better. Although the efficiency of meditating and cultivating was low, it was good for a long time and could be done at any time. Do the deity ocean cultivators have any solutions? Another ghost cultivator asked. What solutions can the deity ocean cultivators have? The weapon cultivators smiled bitterly. They are also having a headache about their future cultivation path. It's not only us who can't hunt corpse race members, the deity ocean cultivators are the same. The body cultivator was worried. Then where is the future of the 9 regions? The few of them fell silent. Where was the future? Suddenly, the expression of the weapon cultivator changed. It was obvious that someone had sent a message. Almost at the same time that he checked the message, the others also received the message one after another. After a short while, they raised their heads and looked at each other. They all saw the surprise in each other's eyes. I just received a message from my sect. A new training field has appeared in the inner realm. It can meet the training needs of those below the constellation realm and even those at the constellation realm. Any cultivator from the 9 regions can enter with the battlefield imprint to train themselves and earn merits. The weapon cultivator said. I also received this message. The spell cultivator nodded. Me too. The 4 of them were stunned for a moment. The weapon cultivator then called out, Then what are we waiting for? Let's go back and take a look. After speaking, he took the lead and flew towards the nearest camp. The other 3 followed closely behind. As they flew, they saw countless cultivators rushing towards the camp from all directions. Obviously, they had all received the message from their respective sections. Everyone was very curious. Just what kind of training ground was it that could actually support constellation realm cultivators to temper themselves? This was something they'd never heard of before. Not only did cultivators return to the 9 regions from the Wuxia continent, but in the starry sky, after the constellation realm cultivators who were searching for spirit jades received the news, they also hurried to the 9 regions. It was not like when the 9 regions had just been promoted to a large domain. At that time, the 9 regions were undeveloped and the constellation realm cultivators could find a lot of spirit jades. At the very least, it was absolutely no problem to meet their own cultivation needs. However, over the years, the number of constellation realm cultivators in the 9 regions continued to increase. As long as the spirit jades in the nearby starry sky were born, they would be quickly discovered and collected. As a result, the constellation realm cultivators had to spend more time and energy to obtain spirit jades. Although Lu Yi had brought back a large number of spirit jades from the 3-world island, which was enough to meet the cultivation needs of the constellation realm cultivators, cultivators not only needed to cultivate but also needed all kinds of experience. Therefore, the Guardian Hall had always strictly controlled the distribution of spirit jades and did not let the constellation realm cultivators become overly dependent. The entire 9 regions became very lively in a short period of time. In a space of nothingness, Lu Yi stood quietly, and Little 9 was beside him. Little Huanyang still had that timid look, hiding in the thick hair on Little 9's neck. From time to time, she would poke her head out to look at Lu Yi, but every time Lu Yi looked over, she would shrink back in fear. Near Lu Yi and Little 9, there were large and small mirrors, reflecting all kinds of different scenes. In those scenes, there were the figures of 9 regions cultivators, from all levels, going through the test in their own scenes. The Azura field treasure had officially been put into use. Although Lu Yi roughly knew what was going on, he was still a little worried, so he stayed here to investigate. He was mainly worried about whether little Nine would be able to control this treasure or not. But now, it seemed that he had worried too much. Little Nine could do this with ease. Thinking about it, Little Nine had been maintaining the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield as well as all kinds of secret realms. All the cultivators in the 9 regions were given the overall calculation and distribution of merit points, the exchange of materials and spirit lots, and so on. It could also do it in an orderly manner and had never made a mistake for thousands of years. Now, with the help of the Azura field treasure, it was even easier than what it had done in the past. Lu Yi, you brought back a good thing. Little Nine was undoubtedly a little excited. As the intelligence derived from the combination of the origin of 9 regions and the tool spirit of the plate of heavenly secrets, Little Nine only had one wish since birth, and that was to protect 9 regions and let 9 regions prosper. Anything that was beneficial to 9 regions was something it would pursue with all its might. The power of the Azura field treasure spread out, allowing it to completely remove one of its worries. From now on, it no longer had to worry about the future of the cultivation world of 9 regions. Yes, I'll need you to take care of it later. Lu Yi looked at it apologetically. From the standpoint of the human race, Little Nine was simply like a housekeeper who worked hard without complaint. Its temperament was clearly like a child's. Little Nine waved its claws. It doesn't take much, it's a very simple thing. As it spoke, it suddenly thought of something. Lu Yi, say, in this way, is there still a need to maintain the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield? Without waiting for Lu Yi to answer, it made a decision. As expected, there's no need to maintain it. Let the Spirit Stream tier and the Cloud River tier come in to temper themselves. As long as you like it. Lu Yi smiled. Although the shadows recorded in the Azura field were all above the constellations, they could actually be adjusted. So, even if the Spirit Stream tier cultivators came in to temper themselves, Little Nine could also use the treasure to adjust the strength of those shadows to the corresponding level, so that the cultivators would not face a situation of death. There was no unsolvable situation in the training. This was one of the rules of the Azura field, and the treasure would naturally be inherited. End of chapter. Chapter 1972. After a few days, Lu Yi left. Little Nine, who had just obtained the Azura field, was like getting a favorite toy and would definitely be immersed in it for a short time. Fortunately, with little Huan Yang accompanying him, he wouldn't feel lonely. The matters of the 9 provinces had been dealt with. Lu Ye's figure stood mid-air as he released his divine sense in the direction of Blue Blood Sect. After pondering for a moment, he slowly shook his head and gave up the idea of returning to the sect. In today's Blue Blood Sect, he basically couldn't find anyone he knew or was familiar with. In the past, his second senior sister and sect master were still in the sect, so every time he returned, he would feel a sense of warmth, just like returning home. Now that his second senior sister, sect master, and honored master Yun Xuechu were both gone, it didn't matter whether he returned or not. Moreover, with his current level and strength, rashly returning would only cause the entire Blue Blood Sect to tremble in fear. In this vast 9 provinces, he seemed to have nowhere to go, a moment of frustration. Raising his eyes, Yang Kai glanced towards the direction of the blood-refining realm and could perceive that his 3 blood warriors were cultivating inside. A moment later, 3 blood-red lights flew over from that direction and soon arrived in front of Lu Yi. "Greetings, Master." Xian Yu, Xiang Yin, and Ding Beifeng saluted together. Lu Yi looked at the 3 blood warriors in front of him seriously and found that compared to a few years ago, these 3 seemed to have changed a lot, so he couldn't help showing a look of interest. "It seems you've all had some gains. Was the blood-refining realm really beneficial to blood race cultivators?" But strictly speaking, he was also a blood race cultivator and his bloodline was closer to the blood ancestors than the blood warriors, so why hadn't he noticed? Pondering for a moment, perhaps it was because his bloodline was too rich that he couldn't detect it? Xiang Yin was the most lively and happily said, "We had some gains, many thanks to Master." Lu Yi nodded and waved his hand, then continued to cultivate. If the 3 of them had been sunshine, they might have been able to detect the invasion of the black cloud earlier. As for whether these three would be able to break free from his control after breaking through, Lu Yi wasn't very worried. His current cultivation wasn't low, so it was hard to say who would break through first. As for the other blood warrior, Old Ma was the first blood warrior he had subdued and had remained loyal to him over the years. It was time to bring him back and give him a chance. Xiang Yin and the other two left again. It was a rare opportunity to see the secrets of the sun, and none of them wanted to miss it. Lu Yi stood where he was and thought for a moment. Then he decided to head for Mount Minuscule. On the Immortal Spirit Peak, they spent several days together. Su Yuqing's amorous feelings washed away Lu Ye's exhaustion of the past few years. In the secret chamber, Lu Yi sat alone. Of the two of them, one was in sunshine, while the other was in the late stages of moon jade. Naturally, it was impossible for them to be together all day long like a mortal man and woman. Previously, Lu Yi had planned to go to Mount Fengzhen to ask Su Yuqing about some of the secrets he had seen in the ocean loft of the Heaven Azura race. There was one piece of information that caught his attention. One of the jade slips mentioned something about the external incarnation and the inner core method. It said that these methods were just for accumulating energy in advance. Lu Yi remembered that Su Yuqing had something that looked like a Naiden. Back then, it was because of this Naiden that the two of them had gotten into a dispute. But after talking with Su Yuan, Lu Yi gave up on his original plan. Su Yuan was right about one thing. There were some things that were meaningless to know in advance. For cultivators, what was important was their own cultivation. When one's strength reached a certain level, they would naturally know what they needed to know. The secret chamber wasn't big. Su Yuqing's aura still lingered on Lu Ye's body. Lu Yi took out the various resources he had exchanged from the Azura treasury and placed them beside him. There were treasures of different sizes and varieties. All of them were extremely valuable and rare. The Azura field had closed too suddenly. Otherwise, he could have exchanged for enough treasures in the Azura field to polish his source to perfection. But now, these might not be enough. But whether or not they were enough, he could only use them first. Lu Yi casually picked up a fist-sized blue moon spirit scroll and urged the power of his talent tree to refine it. He could clearly feel an extremely mysterious energy being swallowed by the talent tree from the blue moon spirit scroll and fused into his source. And after fusing with this energy, the quality of his source began to slowly improve. Treasures were consumed one by one. The speed at which the talent tree swallowed them was extremely fast. If it were any other Yu Yao refining so many treasures, it would take at least a few years for her to succeed. But for Lu Yi, they were all consumed in just a few days. Li checked the state of his source. He could clearly feel that compared to before, the quality of his source had improved tremendously. This was very easy to verify. He only needed to refine spirit jades and see the change in the efficiency of converting spiritual power into magic power. But as expected, his source indeed did not reach the state of perfection. He could feel that it was still lacking by a bit. This was a little unbearable. After a long time, Lu Yi sighed. 2 days later, Lu Yi bade farewell to Su Yuqing and stepped on the road to the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He had an agreement with Ma Bin, so he couldn't stay in the 9 states for too long. It would be bad if Ma Bin went to the 10,000 Elephant Sea first and couldn't find him. Moreover, in the current situation, he could only start from the 10,000 Elephant Sea if he wanted to obtain more treasures to polish his source. When he left the three-world island back then, he had asked He Baichuan to put up a bounty for such treasures and buy them regardless of the cost. After all these years, he should have obtained some. Moreover, Yuan Du was a problem. Yuan Du had searched the souls of the 9 states' constellations. If the matter of the mermaid tribe was exposed, then so be it. Yuan Du had no right to say anything. But if Yuan Du realized that the 9 states was the 9 states from 10,000 years ago, he had to think of a way to deal with this old man. They had been enemies for a long time and there was no possibility of peaceful coexistence. But this old man was still sunshine and stayed on the 10,000 Elephant Island all year round. How could he deal with him? No matter what, he could only return to the 10,000 Elephant Sea first. He was also afraid that something would happen to the three-world island while he was away. But if that really happened, he already had a plan. As long as he used the door opened by the Azure Sea Snail to transfer the cultivators of the three-world island to the mermaid tribe's territory, there wouldn't be too many casualties. It was a long journey. A month later, Lu Ye's figure appeared on the 10,000 Elephant Sea and headed straight for the three-world island. Looking from afar, the three-world island was still as prosperous as before. Many cultivators came and went. Lu Ye finally calmed down. It seemed that nothing had happened to the three-world island while he was away. This was also reasonable. The three-world island had made a name for itself in the battle with Zixian. Now, in this vast land, who would be foolish enough to provoke the three-world island if Sunshine didn't do anything? Bai Yue and Zixian were examples. After the two major forces fought the three-world island, almost all of Yu Yao's subordinates were killed. Countless constellations were also killed. Lu Yi had left quietly. No one knew that he had left. With his reputation as a deterrent, the three-world island had become more prosperous in the past few years. This time, Lu Yi had disguised himself as well. He scanned the entire three-world island with his divine perception. Soon, he appeared in the dwarf tribe's talisman shop. He met Hai Tang in the back hall and handed over the things that Su Yuqing had given him. They were materials used to refine talismans. Most of them were specialties of the Fangsuan Mountain. They couldn't be bought anywhere else. Almost every time Lu Yi came to the three-world island from the 9 states, Su Yuqing would prepare a batch of these materials for him to bring over. Hai Tang was very happy. She chatted with Lu Yi for a while and asked about her master's recent situation. Lu Yi told her the truth. After a while, Lu Yi stood up and prepared to leave. Hai Tang suddenly shouted, "Senior brother." Lu Yi turned to look at her. Hai Tang lowered her head and said, "Although Shizhuan is Rizhao, she has never been in a relationship with a man and a woman in her life. Moreover, she is much older than you, so her feelings may not be as passionate as those of young people. Senior brother, you don't mind it too much." She had mustered up her courage to tell Lu Yi these things. After all, she had stayed on the three-world island for many years and gradually heard some things. Senior brother Lu Yi seemed to have met a senior sister from the same sect when he was still a nobody. She was now on the three-world island, but something had happened to her and she had been in seclusion somewhere. Compared to her master, although her master's cultivation level was higher, which man didn't like younger and more energetic women? She was afraid that Lu Yi would dislike her master because of the comparison. Her impression of Lu Yi was actually a little complicated. At first, Lu Yi had saved her life. Later, under her master's arrangement, she became Lu Ye's Dao companion. Only then did she have the qualifications to participate in the dwarf tribe's Battle of the Black Abyss. However, later on, her master actually had a relationship with him. Although she had always called Lu Yi senior brother, because of her master, how could she really treat him as a senior brother? Lu Ye's eyes flashed. Was it not that hot? Hai knew nothing about her master. Of course not. Yuqing is very good, Lu Yi said with a sincere expression. That's good. Hai Tang smiled and nodded. After leaving the dwarf tribe's talisman shop, Lu Yi directly returned to the island's cultivators area. Then his divine sense surged. A moment later, he Baichuan, Ma Shangxi, Yu Shi, and Cheng Xian gathered in the conference hall. Tang Jun. They were basically all the members of the island's management. Among them, Yu Shi and Cheng Xian were the 2 elders of the mermaid tribe. After exchanging a few pleasantries, he Baichuan went straight to the point. He began to report to Lu Yi about the three-world island's income in recent years. Lu Yi hurriedly raised his hand to stop him. Senior brother when senior sister Luan was here, she never mentioned these things to me. You don't have to treat me as an outsider. He Baichuan said, this isn't about treating me as an outsider. Junior brother, you are now the island master. How many spirit jades we earn, where we spend them, and how much surplus we have, you should know. After all, the three-world island is our overall force. I don't need to know. Lu Yi looked at him seriously. He only needed the full support of the three-world island when he needed spirit jades. End of chapter. Chapter 1973. All right. He Baichuan smiled helplessly. In the vast 10,000 Elephant Sea, It was rare for the first island master to act like Lu Yi, especially when the three-world island was already a top-tier spiritual island. Which of the other island masters didn't firmly grasp the financial power of the island in their hands? Only Lu Yi didn't seem to care at all. He Baichuan didn't know whether to say that he had a big heart or was free and easy. Putting aside the matter of the spiritual jades for now, he Baichuan said, "Junior brother, there are now a few new Yu Yao on the island. Aside from everyone here, there are 18 other Yu Yao on the island. These newly ascended Yu Yao were all cultivators of the Jade Conch realm. When they first came to the myriad manifestations sea, they were already late-stage constellation realm cultivators. After cultivating in the Three Realms Island for all these years, they were able to advance. The cultivators of the 9 prefectures had started too late. Therefore, although there were cultivators at the late stage of the constellation realm, there were no cultivators at Yu Yao's level. As for the Qing Li Dao realm, there was something wrong with this realm itself. The cultivators who ascended to the constellations in this realm had their paths cut off. There was basically no hope of ascending to Yu Yao. How should we deal with these new Yu Yao? Junior brother, please come up with a plan, he Baichuan said. Lu Yi asked, what about the other spiritual islands? He Baichuan said, although the myriad phenomenon sea doesn't have any rules regarding the maximum number of Yu Yao a spiritual island can accommodate, the other forces would usually send out new Yu Yao if they have one. They would either return to their own world or leave the island to make a living on their own. After all, the energy on each spiritual island is limited. Yu Yao's consumption of energy is much greater than that of the constellations. If there are too many Yu Yao, it would affect the cultivation efficiency of the constellations. Therefore, there are usually not many Yu Yao on other spiritual islands. Just like Bai Yu and Zi Shen back then, there were actually not many Yu Yao. It was not that they did not have them, but that there was no need for so many Yu Yao to remain on the spiritual island. Every spiritual island could only have 5 guardian Yu Yao. Therefore, even if there were 100 Yu Yao on the island, only the 5 registered guardians would be able to participate in the battle. There were already more than 20 Yu Yao in Three World Island, and there would be more in the future. So, it was time to consider this problem. Sending the extra Yu Yao out was indeed a good idea. With her strength at this level, she should have no problem making a living. However, the situation on Yuan Du's side was unclear at the moment. If he really did that, it might give the enemy an opportunity to take advantage of. As for returning them to their home world, not only was the journey far away, just the explosion zone alone was extremely dangerous for Yu Yao and her companions. If things went wrong, they might even die. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi said, let them do what they want. There's no need to send them out. They were all new to the spiritual island. Even if Yu Yao consumed some of the spiritual island's energy, how much energy could she consume? Moreover, he could also adjust the power of the minor constellation palace, which was enough to ensure that the three-world island had a good cultivation environment. In that case, senior brother thanks junior brother on their behalf. He Baichuan nodded. In truth, he was also a little worried about the ability of those newly ascended Yu Yao to make a living. Lu Ye's words had undoubtedly relieved him of his worries. After all, those newly ascended Yu Yao were all members of the Jade Conch realm. If he allowed them to continue cultivating, it would undoubtedly be better for them to stabilize their cultivation bases. That's right, Lu Yi suddenly said. Did anyone come looking for me while I was away? If Ma Bin had come to the three-world island, he would definitely have let Zhu Yuan inform him. Although 3 months was not a long time, the sun moved very quickly. If Ma Bin had set off immediately after they parted ways, he might have already reached the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Yes. He Baichuan nodded. I was just about to tell junior brother about this. Lu Yi raised his brows. Where is he? He Baichuan said, near the spirit jade mine. HM? Lu Yi was stunned. Was Ma Bin really that efficient? He had already arrived before he had even returned. Moreover, he had already entered the spirit jade mine. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he felt that something was not quite right. If Ma Bin had come, he would have definitely contacted him. If he had not been around, he would have only waited. There was no way he would have contacted He Baichuan. However, if it was not Ma Bin, then who was the one inside the spirit jade mine? Lu Yi suddenly had a bad feeling. He looked at He Baichuan. Senior brother, who are you talking about? The backer of the three-world island, Senior Jian from the Che Ling realm. He Baichuan looked at him in confusion. Junior brother, who else do you think it could be? Jian. Lu Yi was dumbfounded. Why would Jian come to the three-world island and occupy the spirit jade mine? What was she trying to do? More importantly, he had already promised Ma Bin to let him use the spirit jade mine to heal his injuries. However, now that Jian was inside, if the two of them accidentally met, Lu Yi did not dare to imagine what would happen. He suddenly remembered something that Ma Bin had said before. When this old senior from the 9 states had mentioned the spirit jade mine, he had said that it was not only a resource that could only be found in a top-tier realm. It was also related to Rizhao's future path. Lu Yi did not know what Rizhao's future path would be like. His level of cultivation was not high enough, so he had not come into contact with it for the time being. However, from the looks of it, Jian might have come to the three-world island because of this. However, the timing was too unfortunate. Jian had not mentioned coming to the three-world island in the past. Lu Yi suddenly remembered that the three-world island had only become a top-tier spiritual island after the battle with Zixian. In the past, the three-world island had only been a top-tier spiritual island. Naturally, Jian would not have been attracted to the three-world island. On the surface, she was the backer of the three-world island. Back then, it was because of her that the three-world island was able to gain a foothold in the Wanxiang Sea and develop rapidly. Jian had not made any requests at all. Now that the spirit jade mine was beneficial to her cultivation, who could say anything if she wanted to occupy it? Not to mention that Lu Yi wasn't there at the time. Even if Lu Yi was there, he wouldn't have dared to say no. However, if that was the case, what about Ma Bin? Lu Yi felt a headache coming on. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. It was obviously not appropriate to bring Ma Bin back to the dwarf tribe. He did not want to have anything to do with the dwarf tribe. More importantly, he did not want to be involved with the 9 states. Since that was the case, there was only one place left for him to go. How are senior sister Luan and elder Yen Miao doing recently? Lu Yi turned to look at Yu Shi and Cheng Exin. Yu Shi had a standard foxy face. When she smiled, she was very charming. She said softly, reporting to the first island master, senior sister Luan and great elder miss you very much. A few days ago, they sent a message saying that if the first island master comes back, remember to tell you good news. Lu Yi was stunned. He immediately understood and could not help but smile. I will go back and visit the 2 senior sisters. Yu Shi did not say it too clearly. After all, there was a local Rizhao in the three-world island, so she did not dare to say it too clearly. However, Lu Yi already knew what she meant. He did not expect that in just a few years, the 2 of them had succeeded. This was really a pleasant surprise. Although this good news should not be made public, this way, Ma Bin could go to the mermaid tribe's spiritual land to heal. He would not have to worry about disturbing the 2's cultivation. In fact, the 2 of them could even ask Ma Bin about Rizhao's cultivation experience. As a veteran Rizhao who had been promoted for who knows how many years, it would not be a problem for him to give guidance to 2 newcomers. In this way, the three-world island could be considered to have its own Rizhao. Although he had just been promoted, Rizhao was still Rizhao. He was not someone Yu Yao could compare to. The worries in his heart were swept away, and Lu Ye's mood became much more relaxed. Also, as He Baichuan spoke, he took out a storage ring and handed it to Lu Yi. In the past few years, the island has put out a bounty and found a few treasures for Junior Brother. There are not many, but Junior Brother can use them. Lu Ye's mood became even better when he took a look at them. Shockingly, these were all treasures that could be used to temper one's source of magic. Even though there weren't many of them, it was undoubtedly not easy to find them in a place like the Myriad Sea. Since he could find these few items, he would definitely be able to find more. Increase the bounty. Collect as many of these treasures as possible at all costs, Lu Yi instructed. Okay, I will arrange it later, He Baichuan agreed. After the meeting, everyone dispersed. Lu Yi had a rough understanding of the situation on the three-world island in the past few years. He sat cross-legged in his bamboo building and used the power of his talent tree to refine the treasures. He felt that the quality of his art source had improved by a sliver, and he was one step closer to perfection. Satisfied, he stood up and left the bamboo building, heading in a certain direction. There were very few people on the road. On the three-world island, cultivators would only walk around when they were on patrol duty. Most of the time, they would be cultivating on their own. They had all come from poor places, so they naturally knew how precious and rare such a good cultivation environment was. Any cultivator with even the slightest ambition would not waste their time. As a result, the environment on the three-world island could be said to be two distinct areas. The trade area was bustling with people, while the area where the cultivators were stationed was quiet and empty. There were very few traces of people. Soon he arrived in front of a building. With a light flick of his finger, a spell formation was activated. Soon, a head poked out from the second floor of the building. When he saw Lu Yi, he was overjoyed. "Big brother!" With that, he retracted his head. After a while, the door to the building opened. Chu Shen walked out with a smile. "Big brother, you're back?" Outsiders only knew that Lu Yi had been cultivating in seclusion for the past few years. Only a few people knew that he had not been on the three-world island. Chu Shen was undoubtedly one of them. Lu Yi looked him up and down and nodded slightly. "Your cultivation has improved quite well. You're already Yu Yao?" Chu Shen's cultivation talent was undoubtedly very high. When they last met, he was already close to Yu Yao. It was not surprising that he had advanced. Chu Shen chuckled. "It's all thanks to Big Brother. If I hadn't come to the three-world island to cultivate, how could my cultivation have improved so quickly? Big brother, come in and talk." After a while, the two brothers sat down. Chu Shen poured a cup of tea for Lu Yi. Then he looked at Lu Yi curiously. "Big brother, when did you advance to sunshine?" Lu Yi laughed. "Is sunshine that easy?" Chu Shen said matter-of-factly, "Of course it's not easy for others, but for Big brother, it's as easy as pie." It was as if he thought that Lu Yi was omnipotent. Lu Yi did not know why he thought this way. He could only reply, "I still need to polish it for a while." Chapter 1974. Speaking of which, he was really lucky to have met Chu Shen in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. If not for Chu Shen, he would not have met Juyin. Without Che Ling Realm, the three-world island's predicament would not have been resolved. It was because of Chu Shen that Lu Yi had gone to the Che Ling boundary to visit Jiao Yan. Since then, the three-world island had had a smooth sailing. Today, it had been promoted to a top-tier spiritual island and no one dared to covet it. Chu Shen was a descendant of Rizhao. However, he did not have the usual arrogance of Rizhao's descendants. He was simple and honest and had great potential. He would definitely achieve great things in the future. After leaving the 9 states for so many years, Lu Yi had met many people of all shapes and sizes. However, there were not many whom he could really interact with. Chu Shen was one of them. The two brothers chatted for a while. Then, Lu Yi said, "Actually, I came to find you because I have something to ask you." "About my mother?" Chu Shen understood. Lu Yi nodded. "Did Senior Juyin say anything to you?" Chu Shen shook his head. "She did not say much. She only said that the spirit jade mine here is beneficial to her cultivation. That is why she came here. She wanted to mention it to you before, but you were not in the three-world island, so she went in herself." Indeed. It seemed that the spirit jade mine was an extremely important cultivation resource to Rizhao. This had nothing to do with the production of spirit jade. Instead, it was a mystery that Lu Yi did not know about. That mystery could even heal the injuries to Ma Bin's Dao Foundation. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi said, "Since Senior is here, I have to pay him a visit. Little brother Shin, if you have nothing to do, why don't you come with me?" No matter what, he was the first island master of the three-world island. Now that his backer was here, as the master of the three-world island, he had to pay him a visit. Otherwise, it would be rude. It would be easier to talk to Chu Shen if he brought him along. This was why he came to find Chu Shen first. But Chu Shen was about to nod when his expression suddenly changed. Then, he shrank his neck and looked at Lu Yi pitifully. Big brother, mother told me to focus on my cultivation and not be distracted. Lu Yi blinked. He did not sense that someone was watching them. However, since Juyen had sent him a message, it meant that she had been paying attention. As expected, Ri Zhao's power wasn't something that Yu Yao could fathom. Then you should focus on your cultivation. Lu Yi said and stood up. I'll come and see you again later. Take care, big brother. Chu Shin waved his hand. After leaving Chu Shin's residence, Lu Yi went straight to the spiritual jade vein. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous. He couldn't describe his feelings towards Jiao Yan, but he felt that this senior was different from the other Ri Zhao he had met before. Especially his attitude towards him, he seemed to be annoyed. However, Li didn't think she had done anything to offend her. If she really did hate her, why would she be willing to become Three World Islands backer? Lu Yi couldn't figure it out, but he didn't have the time to think about it. Juyen didn't want Chu Shun to follow them, so she probably wanted to talk to him alone. It didn't take long for them to reach the entrance to the Spirit Jade Mine. Cultivators from the island were stationed here. Ordinary people, even if they were from the island, were not allowed to enter without orders. Seeing Lu Yi, several cultivators hurriedly saluted. Lu Yi waved his hand and walked straight into the cave. The Spirit Jade Vein of Three World Island wasn't very big, so the cave wasn't very deep. After walking for about 100 feet, they arrived at the vein. The energy here was extremely dense, especially at the locations of the veins. Many spirit jades were being nurtured, whether they were formed or not. A voluptuous figure was sitting cross-legged there. Her eyes were closed, and her hands were placed on her knees. Her hair was tied up into a woman's bun, revealing her slender and fair neck. Her tight palace attire revealed an exaggerated curve of her breasts, which tugged at one's heartstrings. However, what made Lu Yi helpless was that Zhou Yan's face was still shrouded in light, making it difficult for him to see clearly. It was the same when he went to the Che Ling realm last time, and this time, he lowered his head and cupped his fists. Lu Yi greets Senior. There was no response. Lu Yi just stood there and waited. He waited for more than half a day, but Lu Yi didn't show any signs of impatience. He just silently thought about his own matters. He knew that Sunshine had no concept of time, but since Jiao Yan had sent a message to Chu Shin, she definitely wouldn't leave him here. After a while, Jiao Yan's voice suddenly rang out. In the starry sky, Sunshine is the peak. No matter who it is, once they reach the peak of Sunshine, their cultivation will have no room for improvement. Do you know where the path lies after Sunshine? Lu Yi was stunned. He shook his head and said, This junior doesn't know. He was only in the late Moon Jade realm and hadn't reached Sunshine yet. How would he know the path after Sunshine? After Sunshine is Dao. Dao. Lu Yi looked puzzled. But didn't Senior say that Sunshine is the peak? If that's the case, then where does Dao come from in the future? Ha! Jian seemed to chuckle. Sunshine is the peak, and after Sunshine is Dao. The timing is different, and the path ahead is different. Lu Yi thought hard. He didn't understand why Juyen would suddenly tell him these things. Juyen seemed to have seen through his doubts. She slowly said, You are extremely talented and your strength is improving rapidly. Sooner or later, you will face these problems. I just don't know if you will be able to find your own Dao by then. Senior praises me too much. This junior is still worried about breaking through to Sunshine. These matters are a little far away from me. Jiao Yan said, Don't belittle yourself. When that day comes... She suddenly stopped talking and changed the topic. The foundation of the three-world island is shallow. There seems to be no expert behind you to guide you. The path of cultivation will be bumpy. Since you are close to Shin, I would like to accept you as my disciple. Are you willing? Lu Yi was completely stunned. He didn't have much contact with Juyen. The last time they met, Juyen didn't seem to have a good impression of him. Therefore, he didn't expect Juyen to have the intention of accepting him as her disciple. However, in the eyes of outsiders, the foundation of the three-world island was very shallow. There was no sunshine in the entire Jade Conch galaxy. Juyen's suggestion was undoubtedly out of goodwill. It was mostly for Chu Shin's sake, but in reality, Lu Yi thought about it carefully. Not to mention Ma Bin's side, Just Mount Fengsuan alone had more than 10 Rizhao backing him. If he really needed someone to guide him in his cultivation, Su Yuqing alone would be enough. There was no need for him to become a disciple of another Rizhao. But Juyen had already said this, and it was out of goodwill. If he rejected her now, wouldn't she be angry? It was a good thing to become Sunshine's disciple, but correspondingly, there would be some restrictions, especially when Ma Bin was coming. You have concerns? Juyen instantly saw through Lu Ye's thoughts. Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, Senior, please forgive me. The Three-World Island has many grievances with Guardian Yuan Du Senior and Guardian Yuan Du are both Sunshine's disciples in the Vientiane Galaxy. If this junior really becomes your disciple, Guardian Yuan Du. Guardian Yuan Du. Juyen sneered. If you really become my disciple, he won't dare to have any ideas. These words were very domineering. Lu Yi was slightly aware of Juyen's power. No hurry to reply. When you have thought it through, you can tell me, Juyen said slowly. Thank you, Senior. Lu Yi breathed a sigh of relief. If Juyen really wanted him to reply now, he could only accept his fate. After all, becoming Sunshine's disciple was not a bad thing. If Senior has no other instructions, this junior will take his leave. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked at her carefully. Go. Jian waved her hand. Lu Yi turned and left. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. Have you found the person you are looking for? Lu Yi was stunned for a moment, then reacted. Juyen should be asking about Ban Ci. Last time in the Carbell world, he asked Juyen about this. Not yet. Lu Yi shook his head. Then take your time. You will find him eventually. Lu Yi stood in place, looking a little lost. After confirming that Juyen had nothing else to say, he left. Vientiane Island, in the Guardian Palace, Yuan Du's eyes were gloomy. It had been a few years since the battle between Three-World Island and Zixian. Although Zixian had taken back her own top-grade spiritual island, she had suffered heavy losses. Because of this, Zixian had completely cut off all contact with Yuan Du. This was obviously Zixian's higher-ups expressing their dissatisfaction. If not for Yuan Du's secret instigation, Zixian would not have encountered such a disaster. In the end, she lost her spiritual island, and Yu Yao's people were all killed. Her reputation was greatly damaged. Three-World Island was the main culprit, but Yuan Du could not escape responsibility. As a result, Yuan Du no longer had a decent spiritual island to rely on. Originally, he had Baiyue and Zixian, but now, he only had the title of guardian, but he could not reap any benefits from it. Yuan Du could not do anything about Zixian's actions. He could only pour all his hatred on Three-World Island and Lu Yi. Calculating the time, He Yun should have reached Lu Ye's hometown. If Sunshine attacked, such a realm would not be able to stop him. When the news spread, Lu Yi would be devastated, right? But this was not enough. From his perspective, as long as Three-World Island did not fall, his reputation would not be restored. Therefore, no matter what, he had to destroy Three-World Island and kill Lu Yi. He already had a detailed plan, and this time, he had a good reason to attack. As a result, even if he attacked personally, it would not be considered breaking the rules of the Vientiane Sea. If Sunshine attacked, even a top-grade spiritual island would not be able to stop him. But he did not make a move. Because of an accident, his plan was disrupted. Che Ling Realm's Jiao Yen had entered Three-World Island and had not left. This made him very vexed. Although his plan had a good reason, it could not withstand too much verification. At most, it could be considered a suspicious point. If Jiao Yen was not there, he only needed to confirm this suspicious point. However, with Jiao Yen around, things would not be so easy to handle. If Jiao Yen wanted to get to the bottom of it, what could he use to confront her? He did not want to go for wool and come home shorn. Therefore, what he needed to consider now was how to get Jiao Yen to leave Three-World Island. End of chapter. Chapter 1975. It would be best if Jiao Yen could leave the Wanxiang Galaxy. Otherwise, Ri Zhao's speed was too fast. Once he received the news, it would not take much effort for him to rush over from Che Lingjia. At that time, he could quickly take action and destroy the Three-World Island. Even if Jiao Yen found out later, she would be powerless. As long as the three-world island was destroyed, not only would he gain a ready-made top-level spiritual island, but he would also gain control of a channel to contact the mermaid clan. He had searched the souls of a few of the three-world islands' constellations before. How could he not know about the existence of the mermaid clan? They were an extremely rare race. If he could control them, it would be a huge fortune. Not to mention, the mermaid clan lived under the Wanxiang Sea, which was a foreign land in the galaxy since ancient times. There was the magical Tian Luo Palace there, and there was a huge spiritual jade mine there. Therefore, in his eyes, the three-world island represented not only the value of a top-level spiritual island, but also more than its apparent value. He did not mention this secret to anyone. After thinking about it, Yuan Du felt that calling an old friend was a good idea. It just so happened that he and Jiao Yen had a mutual friend, Ri Zhao from another galaxy. If he had something to ask, Jiao Yen should give him face. After deciding on the plan, it was time to carry it out. On the three-world island, in the alchemy room, Lu Yi came to visit his second senior sister. Although she no longer needed to make pills to maintain the livelihood of the island, she still stayed in the alchemy room. She still needed to make a lot of spiritual pills outside of cultivation. These spiritual pills would not be sold outside. They were used by her family. After chatting for a while, Lu Yi suddenly remembered something. Where's Yaya? When he left that year, he had entrusted Yaya to Shui Yuan. However, when he returned this time, he did not see any trace of the little girl. There seemed to be no trace of her in the entire three-world island. He could not help but feel puzzled. Shui Yuan said, Yaya is at the mermaid clan's territory. She seems to like the environment there. Once, she went there and did not come back. I went to see her once. She was very happy there, so I did not care about her anymore. Lu Yi understood. Speaking of which, he had to go to the mermaid clan's territory. When Ma Bin came back, he would have to borrow their spiritual jade mine. No matter what, he had to greet the mermaid clan. Moreover, Luan Xiao and Miao Yen had both been promoted to Sunshine, so he really should go and congratulate them. After a short while, Lu Yi took back her blue sea snail from second senior sister and opened the door to the mermaid tribe's territory. His figure entered the door and appeared outside the Tian Luo Palace in the next instant. After a while, Lu Yi finally saw Yen Miao and Luan Xiao. On the surface, the two women didn't seem to have changed much, but the unconcealable aura of sunshine on their bodies showed their powerful cultivation. This was normal. After all, they had just advanced not long ago, and the two of them had not stabilized their cultivation for the time being. After a period of time, they would be able to freely withdraw and release their auras. Both Luan Xiao and Smoky Miao were very happy and grateful to Lu Yi. Yen Miao's gratitude was natural. If Lu Yi hadn't helped her get rid of the bloodline curse poison, she wouldn't have been able to reach Sunshine. Now, not only had her cultivation improved greatly, but she was also no longer troubled by the bloodline curse poison. She could leave the Wanxiang Sea at any time. If it weren't for the living environment in the mermaid tribe's territory, the entire tribe would have considered moving. As for Wan Xiao, if she had stayed in the Yuluo realm, she wouldn't have been able to reach Sunshine either, because there wasn't such a good cultivation environment and abundant cultivation resources. Other things aside, she had taken a lot of supreme-grade soul-refining pills over the years. Both women were the first and only sunshine of their tribe. Now that they had made the great leap, it was as if they had been reborn. Lu Yi congratulated the two women and then looked at Yen Miao. Great Elder, I have a request. Yen Miao smiled. Junior brother, you can say whatever you want. Don't say request. Our tribe is where we are today because of Junior brother's help. If there's anything you like in our tribe, feel free to take it. Lu Yi nodded. It's like this. I have an elder who was injured in a fight with someone a few days ago. He briefly explained Ma Bin's situation. He didn't mention Ma Bin's identity, nor did he mention anything about the Taoist Foundation. After all, he didn't know anything about it. He only said that he wanted to borrow the spiritual jade vein here to heal his injury. Yen Miao nodded and agreed. Although the mermaid clan respected the queen, she was still young. Thus, Yen Miao had always been in charge of the clan's affairs. There was no need to report such trivial matters to the queen. Lu Yi also vaguely mentioned that the elder had a high cultivation level. He should be at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. He asked Yan Miao and Luan Xiao to take good care of him. He might be able to guide them on their future cultivation path. The two women were overjoyed. This was undoubtedly what they wanted the most right now. Lu Yi wanted to ask Luan Xiao about her future plans. After all, she had already reached the Sunshine Realm. There was no point for her to stay in the Wanxiang Sea. Moreover, she couldn't show her face in public. She could return to the Yuluo Galaxy and take charge of the Yuluo realm. But seeing her expectant look, he didn't ask. While they were talking, a petite figure suddenly rushed over. Along the way, she let out a string of bell-like laughter. Then, she threw herself into Lu Ye's arms. "Daddy!" Her little head rubbed against Lu Ye's chest. Lu Yi hugged Yaya and patted her head. "Why are you here?" "It's fun here." Yaya raised her head and smiled at Lu Yi. Lu Yi also raised his head and looked at Bai Lu, who had rushed over behind Yaya. Ghost was with Bai Lu. It seemed that Bai Lu had been taking care of Yaya all this time. Otherwise, they wouldn't be together so coincidentally. Bai Lu was still the same. She didn't change much. When she saw Lu Yi, she smiled gently. "Senior brother." Lu Yi nodded. "Sorry to trouble you." Ghost looked at him with disdain. "If you know it's trouble, then hurry up and take the doll away." During this time, Bai Lu had been taking care of Yaya and didn't have time to cultivate with her. This made her very unhappy. Yaya, who was in Lu Ye's arms, suddenly turned her head and glanced at Ghost. Ghost couldn't help but shrink her neck and hide behind Bai Lu. She couldn't tell what was wrong with Lu Ye's daughter. She only instinctively felt that this little girl was not normal. After all, from her appearance, this little girl didn't show any signs of cultivation. But if she really didn't show any signs of cultivation, how could she appear in a place like this? Moreover, she seemed to have suffered a loss at the hands of the other party once, but she couldn't remember the specific situation. This matter was very strange. One had to know that she was now Yu Yao. Means that could interfere with her memories and thoughts were not ordinary. It had been a long time since Lu Yi had come to the mermaid clan. Yan Miao immediately set up a banquet. Firstly, it was to entertain Lu Yi. Secondly, it was to celebrate her and Luan Xiao's marriage to Jin Rizhao. The entire Huang Luo Palace was full of joy. Lu Yi stayed at the mermaid clan for a few days, mainly to wait for the interval between the blue sea snails to be used. After the banquet, he went to the place where Hupa was and stayed by her side. Several years had already passed, but Hua Si still showed no signs of awakening. Lu Yi couldn't help but worry. Ever since he started cultivating, this was the first time he had experienced what it meant to be afraid. He was afraid that Hua Si would remain in this sealed state forever, never to wake up. He talked to himself and told Hua Si a lot of things. It didn't matter if he didn't get a response. A few days later, Lu Yi left. He originally wanted to take Yaya with him. After all, it wasn't good for her to stay at the mermaid clan. Unfortunately, Yaya didn't want to go, and with Bai Lu's support, Lu Yi could only let her go. When he returned to the three-world island, Lu Yi left a precious blood clone to guard the island. His main body, on the other hand, left silently until he reached a remote and uninhabited place. Only then did he find an opportunity to dive into the sea and begin his cultivation. His current cultivation level was indeed at the late stage of Yu Yao's, but he hadn't cultivated properly since his breakthrough. Now that he couldn't solve the problem of his source origin quickly, he could only cultivate first. After several years of accumulation, his cultivation level at the late stage of Yu Yao had already stabilized. The next few days were calm and peaceful. The three-world island was as prosperous as before. Nothing special happened. Lu Yi was also immersed in his cultivation and didn't pay attention to the outside world. It wasn't until 2 months later that the precious blood clone, who was guarding the three-world island, received news and hurried out. As expected, he saw a familiar figure in the guest hall. "Fellow Taoist Zhu." Lu Yi cupped his fists. "Fellow Taoist Lu." Zhu Yuan returned the greeting. He didn't see Ma Bin, but Lu Yi knew that Ma Bin had come. Ma Bin seemed to have a special ability that allowed him to possess other people's bodies. Back then, Lu Yi had seen him plunge into Zhu Yuan's body and disappear. It was thanks to this method that Ma Bin was able to leave safely under the heavy blockade of the Vientiane galaxy. As per fellow Taoist's invitation, this Zhu has come, Zhu Yuan said with a deep meaning. Lu Yi didn't dare to show the slightest change in expression. When he invited Ma Bin, he didn't expect Zhou Yan to come to the three-world island. Now that Zhu Yan was here, he didn't know if she was secretly paying attention to something. If there was something strange, she might notice it. Follow me. Lu Yi called out and took the lead to walk out. Although Zhu Yuan didn't understand what he meant, he still followed. Just as the two of them moved, Lu Yi felt a figure flash in front of him. Then, a fragrance hit him. He looked up and saw a plump figure standing in front of him. Her face was surrounded by light, so he couldn't see her face clearly. Zhu Yuan was even more shocked. He quickly put on a defensive posture. Lu Yi blinked and hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Senior Jiuyan. Senior, what's the matter? Jiuyan didn't answer. Even though Lu Yi couldn't see her face clearly, he could still feel that Jiuyan was looking at Zhu Yuan at this moment. Was Ri Zhao's perception so sharp? Lu Yi was secretly shocked. Jiuyan couldn't have come here for no reason. She obviously sensed something. After thinking about it carefully, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong. If Ri Zhao's perception was so sharp, then Ma Bin couldn't have escaped from the Vientiane galaxy so smoothly. It seemed that either Jiuyan was strong enough, or Ma Bin was injured, causing his aura to leak out. End of chapter. Chapter 1976. Jiao Yan's sudden appearance left Lu Yi unperturbed, but Zhu Yuan turned pale with fright. He hurriedly looked at Lu Yi. Lu Yi hurriedly said, this is Senior Jiao Yan from Lingjia. She's been cultivating on the island recently. Zhu Yuan had traveled the 10,000 manifestations sea before, so he had naturally heard of Jiao Yan's name. He hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Senior Jiao Yan. Jiao Yan's silent pressure not only made Lu Yi nervous, but also made Zhu Yuan nervous. Beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. At one point, Lu Yi even felt that Jiao Yan's magic power was about to go berserk. But for some reason she managed to suppress it. Then she slowly turned her head and looked at Lu Yi. Your friend? Lu Yi hurriedly replied, yes. Why you here? Jiao Yan asked again. Brother Zhu wants to buy something, but he's not familiar with the 10,000 manifestations sea, so he asked me to take him to the 10,000 manifestations island. He casually made up a story. Jiao Yan didn't speak. After a while, her figures suddenly disappeared. Only her voice could be heard, let's go. Lu Yi hurriedly replied. After a short while, he took Zhu Yuan to the 10,000 manifestations island and entered the 10,000 manifestations chamber of commerce. Half a day later, the two left the 10,000 manifestations chamber of commerce and flew toward the 10,000 manifestations sea. When they reached a desolate star and entered a secret place, Lu Yi set up a formation to conceal them. Only then did Zhu Yuan let out a long sigh of relief. Senior, you can come out now, Lu Yi softly called out. A shadow flashed out of Zhu Yuan's body and condensed into Ma Bin's figure. Compared to a few months ago, Ma Bin's current state seemed to be worse. Even his face was slightly pale. Jiao Yan is really something. Ma Bin's face was full of admiration. He looked at Lu Yi. How did you get involved with her? Lu Yi smiled bitterly. She's the backer of the island. She suddenly came to the island and occupied the spirit jade mine to cultivate. Did she discover you? I sense something, but I'm not sure. Moreover, she doesn't know it's me. Otherwise, she wouldn't have held back, Ma Bin said. Since the spirit jade mine has been seized by her, it's my fate. It's fine. Lu Yi understood Ma Bin's meaning and immediately said, although we can't use the island's spirit jade mine for the time being, there are other places to go. There's a place to go? Ma Bin's face was filled with astonishment, but he soon remembered that Lu Yi had indeed mentioned a third mineral lode. Senior, please wait a moment. After a while, a spirit inscription suddenly flashed in front of Lu Yi and disappeared, followed by another Lu Yi appearing out of thin air. Surprisingly, It was the master who had received the news from his doppelganger and had hurried over. He raised his hand and recalled the precious blood clone. Zhu Yuan was dumbfounded. Even Ma Bin showed an interested expression. What kind of doppelganger technique is this? Even he hadn't been able to see any flaws. Although his strength had been damaged, he had lived for so many years, and his eyesight was still there. Lu Ye's move was truly unexpected. It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. Lu Yi didn't know how to explain that this was the blood race's precious blood doppelganger, so he casually changed the topic. He took out the blue sea snail and blew it. Soon, a door appeared in front of him. "Senior, please follow me." Saying so, Lu Yi took the lead and walked in, followed by Ma Bin and Zhu Yuan. A moment later, in front of the heavenly spiral palace, Zhu Yuan was dumbfounded as he looked at the mere people walking around. He never thought that one day he would be able to see such a rare race. After all, according to the rumors, the mere people should have been extinct long ago. Although Ma Bin was surprised, he was still able to keep his composure. But when he learned that he was actually under the 10,000 Elephant Sea, his calmness turned into astonishment. He had never known that the 10,000 Elephant Sea was such a scene. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao came to greet him in person. Lu Yi had already greeted them before, so there was no need to say anything more. "Senior, please rest assured and recuperate here. This portal won't last long, so I have to hurry back. Our island is in contact with this place. If Senior needs anything, just let someone tell me and I will prepare it for Senior." Ma Bin looked at Lu Yi with a complicated expression. "You are so considerate." Back then, when Lu Yi learned about the recent situation in the 9 regions, he was gratified that his homeland still existed, but he never thought that he would have any intersection with his homeland. But he never thought that when he was most trapped and helpless, it was a junior from his homeland who solved his worries and solved his difficulties, and gave him the hope and possibility of making a comeback. "Senior, you are too polite." Lu Yi nodded and looked at Yen Miao and Luan Xiao. "I will have to trouble you here." "Don't worry." Yen Miao smiled and watched Lu Yi step into the portal and disappear again. After settling Ma Bin down, Lu Yi finally had one less worry. However, Ma Bin's injury was a wound to his Dao foundation. Although he could use the spirit jade vein, he was afraid that it wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. It should take a long time for him to recover. Lu Yi only needed to do one thing, and that was to cultivate. First, he would raise his cultivation to the peak of the Moon Jade realm. When his source origin was polished to perfection, he would be able to condense the flower of Qi and advance to the Sunshine realm. The precious blood avatar returned to the 3-world island. Jiao Yen did not appear again, nor did she ask anything. It seemed that Ma Bin was right. Jiao Yen vaguely sensed something, but she could not make a specific judgment. That was why she asked Zhu Yuan to buy something and leave quickly. It was not that there was no sunshine in the Wanxiang Sea, but it would not stay for too long. A short break would not be a problem. Of course, the precondition was that when Luoxia from the Daluo galaxy escorted many cultivators here, he was immediately targeted by sunshine from the Daluo galaxy and summoned to talk to him. Even so, Luoxia did not stay in the Wanxiang Sea for too long. That time, he seemed to have stayed in the Wanxiang Sea for less than a month. Time passed. Another year passed in the blink of an eye. Under the Wanxiang Sea, Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes. His cultivation had reached its limit. The improvement of the quality of his source origin had greatly increased his cultivation efficiency. That was why he could make such great gains in just 1 year. Generally speaking, when a Yu Yao reached his level, they would consider preparing to advance to sunshine. However, this barrier was not easy to break through. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao in the past, He Baichuan, Yushi, Qing Xian, and the others were all stuck at this barrier. In the universe, countless Yu Yao had failed to break through this barrier. The cultivation of the upper 3 realms was the cultivation of essence, energy, and spirit. Sunshine corresponded to spirit. Therefore, Yu Yao not only needed their cultivation to reach the standard, but also their divine sense to reach the standard. This was the fundamental reason why supreme-grade divine refining pills were so popular. Wan Xiao and Yen Miao were able to advance smoothly largely because they had persisted in consuming supreme-grade divine refining pills all these years. However, the Yu Yao of the Daluo galaxy had such convenience. Other Yu Yao did not. They could only try their best to find some spirit pills or treasures that could improve their divine sense cultivation. However, if they ate too many spirit pills, unless they were supreme grade, they would not benefit them. It was foreseeable that on the Daluo galaxy, He Baichuan and the others would have an easier time advancing to sunshine than the other Yu Yao. This was because they were currently being supplied with supreme-grade divine refining pills. However, this did not mean that they would definitely advance. This was also related to their previous accumulation. However, on Lu Ye's side, a disappointed expression appeared on his face. This was because when Yu Yao's divine sense cultivation had reached its limit, he could clearly feel a layer of shackles binding his body. This layer was the biggest barrier for all Yu Yao. He felt that he only needed to exert a little force and he could break through. This was definitely not an illusion. It was the truth. In other words, if he wanted to advance to sunshine, he could do so now. This undoubtedly meant that this layer of shackles did not pose any hindrance to him. In fact, if he thought about it carefully, this was only natural. Back when he was cultivating in the 9 states, he was only at the true lake realm. However, he had already nurtured his soul avatar and spirit sea. Compared to ordinary cultivators, his divine sense had always been stronger. After that, he had obtained a rainbow divine lotus in the Soul Tribe's ancestral land. Since then, his divine sense had been constantly nourished and strengthened. So many years had passed. Even if he had not consumed any supreme-grade divine refining pills, the rainbow divine lotus was still much more useful than simply consuming spirit pills. The strength of his divine sense was enough to meet the requirements for advancing to sunshine. Once his divine sense was strong enough and his divine sense had accumulated enough cultivation, the shackles were no longer shackles. They could be easily broken through. However, Lu Yi naturally could not advance to sunshine just like that. If he had only wanted to increase his divine sense cultivation, he would have done so many years ago. All these years, he had been searching for resources to refine his divine sense cultivation. His various experiences in the Azura realm had brought him very close to success. If he gave up now, all his previous efforts would have been for naught. Thus, no matter what, he still had to condense the flower of qi. Unfortunately, over the past year, even though the 3-world island had increased the bounty on his head, he still had very little to show for it. So far, he had only obtained a single treasure that could refine one's divine sense cultivation. Lu Yi wanted to go to the carriage bell realm. Back then, he had obtained a spoil of war from Zixian. It was a treasure of this type. In the end, he had given it to Aunt Yu. However, by the time he had found out, it was already too late. However, after thinking about it, he decided against it. Normally, Yu Yao would refine such a treasure as soon as she obtained it. Aunt Yu was not someone who lacked spirit jades. She would not keep it. After all, it was something that he had given away. How could he take it back? Based on his current needs for such a treasure and his own judgment, if he could only obtain one each year, it would take him at least 20 to 30 years to achieve his goal. After returning from the sea, Lu Yi was depressed. Where should he go to find it? He could not help but think of the Azura realm. Mi Shi, the leader of the heavenly Azura tribe, had advanced too quickly. If he had advanced a year or two later, and if the Azura realm had closed a year or two later, he would not have been in such an awkward situation. This was the 10,000 Elephant Sea, where countless cultivators from different galaxies gathered. It could be said to be the center of the universe. If he could not find what he needed here, where could he find it? End of chapter. Chapter 1977. Just as he was feeling depressed, his expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly rushed off in a certain direction. He didn't know why Jiao Yan had summoned him. A moment later, inside the spirit jade mine, Lu Yi bowed. "Greetings, senior." Jiao Yan was still cultivating, but she didn't make Lu Yi wait. Instead, she directly asked, "Have you considered the matter from last time?" What? Lu Yi was stunned. The matter from last time? was about Zhu Yuan? However, he quickly realized that Jiao Yan was probably asking about accepting him as a disciple. He didn't know how to answer because he hadn't considered this matter at all. However, it wouldn't be good if he rejected her directly. It seems you're unwilling. Jiao Yan snorted softly. She could already tell what he was thinking. Lu Yi apologized. Senior, please forgive me. It's just that, no need to say anything more. Since you're unwilling, I won't force you, Jiao Yan interrupted him, seemingly a little annoyed. On the other hand, your cultivation seems to have made significant progress. Lu Yi hurriedly said, I've been cultivating in seclusion recently, and I've made some progress. Jiao Yan said, Yu Yao and Ri Zhao are only one step apart, but in reality, they're worlds apart. Once you cross over, you'll enter a whole new world. However, if you can't, you'll only be wasting your life away. You're currently at a critical juncture, so you must remember to guard against arrogance and rashness. Try not to fight with others and don't get injured easily. Yes, Lu Yi replied. He suddenly felt that he might have misunderstood Jiao Yan. She didn't seem to hate him at all. Her words were clearly the concern of a senior toward a junior. I heard that you're looking for treasures that can improve the quality of your art source? Jiao Yan suddenly changed the topic. Three World Island had been sparing no effort in offering rewards for such treasures, so it was impossible for Jiao Yan not to have heard of them. That's right. Lu Ye's expression changed. Does Senior have a way? Jiao Yan didn't answer. She only said, of course, the higher the quality of your art source, the better. However, everyone has their own limits, so it's fine as long as your art source's quality is sufficient. There's no need to pursue it too much. Lu Yi naturally understood this principle. An art source's main function was to convert the spiritual energy that a cultivator refined into magic power during cultivation. It was something unique to Yu Yao. If a cultivator's efficiency in refining spiritual energy was limited, then no matter how high the grade of the source was, it would be meaningless, because there would not be enough spiritual energy to be converted. Therefore, it was fine as long as he had enough source energy, but Lu Yi didn't just want to have enough. He also wanted to polish his spiritual source to perfection. This wasn't something that he could tell Jiao Yan. He could only obediently say, Junior understands. It's good that you understand. As Jiao Yan spoke, she flicked her finger and an item flew over. Lu Yi instinctively grabbed it. However, before he could inspect it, Jiao Yan's voice rang out. Go on. Cultivate well and break through as soon as possible. Lu Yi blinked, then bowed and left. Only after leaving the spirit jade mine and returning to his residence did Lu Yi have a chance to check what Jiao Yan had given him. It was a storage ring, but when Lu Yi checked the contents of the ring, he couldn't help being pleasantly surprised. This was because there were a total of 8 treasures in the ring that could temper the quality of one source. According to the rules of the Azura field, these 8 treasures were worth at least an Azura seal. What did Jiao Yan mean by this? She had called him over to give him pointers and said that it was fine as long as his source energy was of sufficient quality. It was as if she was trying to persuade him not to waste his energy and time on this. However, she had also given him these 4 treasures. Lu Yi couldn't figure out what was going on. As a member of the Sunshine sect who had lived for who knew how many years, it was normal for her to have such treasures. But why would she give them to him? This was what Lu Yi couldn't understand. Aunt Yu should want them. Not to mention Aunt Yu, Chu Shen had already advanced to Yu Yao. He also wanted them. Why would Jiao Yan give them to him? If it was because of Chu Shen, it didn't make sense for him to love the house and its crow. After thinking about it, Lu Yi felt that there was only one explanation. Whether it was Aunt Yu or Chu Shen, the quality of their source energy was sufficient. The treasures in Jiao Yan's hands were completely unnecessary. She also knew that he had asked the 3 World Island to put a bounty on such treasures, so she gave them to him. But no matter what, this gift from Jiao Yan was exactly what Lu Yi wanted. He silently remembered this favor in his heart. Now that the gap between their strength and status was too big, there was no need to talk about repayment. He would think about it in the future. After happily refining these treasures, Lu Yi keenly sensed that there were some unusual changes in his source energy. It was as if it wasn't too far away from reaching the Great Circle stage. He carefully sensed it and confirmed that it was not an illusion. His source energy was indeed not far from perfection. This made him pleasantly surprised. It seemed that his previous estimate was somewhat different from the actual situation. Based on the current situation, he only needed 2 or 3 more sets of treasures to complete the task. 2 or 3 treasures, it was really not much. If he was lucky, he might be able to achieve it in one day. Even if he was unlucky, there was still hope for him to achieve it in 2 or 3 years. Now that his cultivation was enough, and he had fulfilled all the requirements for breaking through to the Sunshine Sect, all that was left was to condense the qi refining flour. Lu Yi was in a good mood and was looking forward to it. On the island of versatility, Yuan Du was guarding the palace. A gust of evil wind swept over, and He Yun revealed himself. Yuan Du sensed something and immediately came out to greet him. When he saw the figure in He Yun's hand, he nodded slightly and said, "Fellow Taoist He Yun is quite fast. You caught her so quickly." He Yun threw the figure in his hand to the ground in front of him. "It's just catching Yu Yao. What's the trouble?" That being said, this Yu Yao was not someone he had casually caught. At this moment, Yu Yao was lying on the ground with a slender figure. Her exposed skin was blood red, and her 2 pointy ears indicated that she was a blood tribe member. At this moment, this blood tribe member Yu Yao had been sealed by He Yun and couldn't move at all. Her face was full of fear and uneasiness. "So what do we do next?" He Yun asked Yuan Du with a gloomy expression. Not only had Zi Xian suffered heavy losses, but he had also listened to Yuan Du's nonsense and made a trip to the 9 states. In the end, even the avatar he had spent 3,000 years to create had died there. How could he not take revenge for such a great grudge? Moreover, unlike Yuan Du, he had recognized the 9 states and was still thinking about the supreme treasure of the starry sky, the Tao tree. His avatar hadn't found any traces of the Tao tree in the 9 states. In addition, he had previously inquired about Lu Yi, so he boldly speculated that this Lu Yi might have obtained the inheritance of the Tao tree. Otherwise, how could his cultivation have improved so quickly? This was a very suspicious point. Since it was suspicious, he couldn't let it go. With this speculation, he naturally came to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to take down Lu Yi. In this regard, he and Yuan Du were like-minded. The only difference was that Yuan Du was purely venting his anger for the sake of his own dignity, but he had other motives. He had no choice but to join forces with Yuan Du if he wanted to take down Lu Yi in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. He couldn't avoid the 10,000 Elephant Galaxy. Therefore, he could only cooperate with Yuan Du. With Yuan Du's help, the resistance would be much lower. He didn't have any other requests. He only wanted Lu Yi to be handed over to him. He told Yuan Du that he wanted to avenge the dead Zi Xian demon cultivator and bring him back to the Zi Xian demon planet to sacrifice to the demon god. Yuan Du didn't suspect anything and immediately agreed. In any case, as long as he could take down the 3-world island and the passage to the mermaid clan's territory, there was no harm in handing Lu Yi over to He Yun. He believed that He Yun wouldn't let Lu Yi live. Moreover, Zi Xian had indeed suffered great losses because of him. Yuan Du knew that if he wanted to maintain his relationship with Zi Xian, he couldn't refuse He Yun's small request. Both of them had their own motives, so of course they hit it off. Moreover, from their point of view, the 2 Rikus joining forces to plot against Yu Yao and the top-grade spiritual island behind her was like pinching a conch with 10 fingers. No accidents would happen. Half a year ago, He Yun came once and reached a verbal agreement with Yuan Du. Then, Yuan Du asked him to capture a member of the blood tribe. He Yun didn't know why, but since it was a cooperation, he didn't refuse. He had also worked hard to capture Yu Yao in the blood tribe's domain. Because of this, he had been hunted down by a few Rikus for a month. Next, we just need to wait. Yuan Du smiled slightly, as if victory was already in his hands. As long as Jiao Yan left the 3-world island, then he could act without worry. Jiao Yan's presence there made him wary. As for how to get Jiao Yan to leave the 3-world island, he had already planned for a long time. He believed that in a few days, the news would reach Jiao Yan's ears. Days passed by. On this day, in the 3-world island's garrison area, a group of people sat cross-legged in front of Lu Ye's bamboo house. They surrounded him in the middle. Lu Yi couldn't raise his cultivation level, and he couldn't find any treasures to improve the quality of his spiritual power source. He seemed to have nothing to do. He wasn't willing to participate in the management of the three-world island, so he simply spread the news that anyone who had any questions about cultivation could ask him at any time. His original intention was to help the island's cultivators solve some of their problems and help them grow better. However, after the news was spread, many people came to him every day to ask for help. Gradually, more and more people gathered, and gradually, it became the current scale. Not only people from the Qingli Dao world and the Yukong world came to look for him, many seniors from the 9 states came as well. Even the sect master came to ask him a few questions. Lu Yi answered all of their questions carefully, and many cultivators learned a lot. While it was bustling here, Lu Ye's expression suddenly changed. He turned his head and looked in a direction with a puzzled expression. Half a day later, the crowd dispersed. Lu Yi went to look for Chu Shen. Why did Senior Jiao Yan suddenly leave? He clearly felt Jiao Yan's aura flash past. She should have left the three-world island. End of chapter. Chapter 1978. Jiao Yan didn't tell Lu Yi anything before she left, so there was no reason for her to tell him. Therefore, he came to Chu Shen's place to ask. Perhaps Chu Shen would know something. Sure enough, Chu Shen knew the situation. Mother said an old friend called her and asked her to go to another galaxy to help. She'll be back soon. I see. Lu Yi understood. Jiao Yan was visiting a friend. However, as Rizhao, it was normal to have friends from other galaxies. Even Lu Yi himself knew many people from other galaxies. Therefore, Lu Yi didn't think too much about it. After chatting with Chu Shen for a while, he left. But for some reason, as Jiao Yan left, Lu Yi suddenly had a feeling of unease, as if something bad was about to happen. This feeling made him secretly vigilant. When one's cultivation had reached such a level, sometimes the sudden inspiration might be a kind of omen. In the bamboo building, Lu Yi thought about it for a long time, but he did not find anything wrong or worthy of attention. This was the Myriad Sea. As long as the rules of the Myriad Sea were not broken, then with the foundation of the three-world island and the reputation he had gained through killing, he could rest easy. After thinking for a long time, he reached into his pocket and took out the dice of fate. He was proud of this thing. He had only rolled it once. The other times were when he entered various training scenarios and the dice of fate appeared on its own. However, based on his previous experiences, the dice of fate lived up to its name. The divinations it rolled were closely related to his future situation to a large extent. Therefore, Lu Yi felt that it wasn't the dice of fate that controlled his fate, but the future's misfortune. If it weren't for the palpitations this time, he wouldn't have used it so casually. However, he couldn't care too much at this moment. After thinking for a while, he threw the dice in front of him. With a rumble, the small die froze. A dim light flashed and turned into the word, "How." Before Lu Yi could take a closer look, the word, "How," turned into a dim light again and entered his forehead. Lu Yi frowned. This "How" was obviously not a good sign. This undoubtedly showed that his palpitations weren't for no reason. Something could really happen. However, since it was "How" and not a misfortune, then it didn't seem to be a big deal. Or perhaps it was not too dangerous, but the process might be a little bumpy? But no matter what, this made Lu Yi cautious. After thinking for a while, he got up and walked towards the pill room. He found second senior sister and talked to her. Second senior sister didn't ask anything and just nodded repeatedly. After leaving second senior sister's place, Lu Yi checked the talent tree. Under the illumination of the flames, a gray mist rose. It was obvious that the mysterious power of the dice of fate was being burned away by the talent tree. At this rate, it would be completely burned away in less than 2 or 3 days. He calmed down a little. In the blink of an eye, another 2 days passed. On this day, Lu Yi was answering the questions of some cultivators when he suddenly felt a brilliant aura rapidly approaching from a certain direction. He hurriedly raised his head to look in that direction and frowned. His sudden impulse had really come true, but what he hadn't expected was that it would actually be that old bastard, Yuan Du. Moreover, it happened to be less than 2 days after Zhuyan left. Was this a coincidence? Lu Yi didn't think so. He wasn't the only one who felt the radiant aura. Many of the Yu Yao on the island also felt it. Immediately, divine thoughts were transmitted from all over the island. After a brief exchange, Lu Yi got up and headed in Yuandu's direction. At the same time, following his order, the defensive formation of the entire three-world island was activated to the extreme. Yuandu had come personally, so it was obvious that he didn't come with good intentions. There were some things that he had to guard against. A moment later, inside the defensive formation, Lu Yi and the other island lords gathered behind him. They stood in the air and looked in the direction Yuandu had come from. This old bastard didn't hide his radiant aura at all, but his speed wasn't fast. In fact, it could even be said that he was very slow. Therefore, along the way, he attracted the attention of countless cultivators. They didn't know what Yuandu was doing. However, when they realized that Yuandu was actually heading towards the famous three-world island, many cultivators showed interest and followed him from afar. Many cultivators knew about the grudge between the three-world island and Yuandu. However, as the protector of the 10,000 creation sea, Yuandu had to strictly abide by the rules of the 10,000 creation sea. Therefore, even if he was radiant, he couldn't do anything to the three-world island as long as they didn't violate any rules. Now that Yuandu had suddenly pointed his sword at the three-world island, it was obvious that he was going to make a big move. Naturally, it made people curious. Junior brother Lu, this old bastard doesn't have good intentions. Baichuan's face was full of worry. Of course, he understood Yuandu's intentions. As radiant, he could have come quickly, but he chose to walk so slowly. He deliberately attracted attention and made people follow him. This was to create momentum. On one hand, it was to put pressure on the three-world island. On the other hand, it was to show others that he was fair and just. He had absolute confidence in himself. Therefore, no matter what he did, he would do it according to the rules of the 10,000 creation sea. No one would criticize him. News spread quickly in the 10,000 creation sea, especially regarding Radiant and the three-world island. Therefore, in just a moment, the entire 10,000 creations sea knew about what was going on here. Those close to the three-world island hurried over to take a look, while those far away also hurried over. Everyone realized that something big might happen today. The journey that should have taken only a dozen breaths took Yuandu an incense stick's worth of time. When Yuandu arrived at the three-world island, there was already a sea of people in all directions. Yuandu didn't come alone. He had brought nearly 100 Yu Yao with him. Some of these Yu Yao belonged to the local star system's domain and were directly under Yuandu's command. However, most of them were the guards of the major spiritual islands. For example, Lu Yi saw Giant Blade Island's Zhao Yunqi, the island master of Giant Blade Island, who had been taken advantage of twice by the three-world island, couldn't help but shrink his neck when he met Lu Ye's eyes. He was traumatized. This time, he didn't want to get involved in the matter against the three-world island. However, since Yuandu had summoned him, he had to come. On the surface, it seemed that the three-world island had no power to resist since Yuandu had personally come. However, Zhao Yunqi still felt uneasy. He had a feeling that things wouldn't go so smoothly. If Yuandu failed, the Giant Blade Island would no longer have the qualifications to establish itself in the 10,000 creation sea. Although he knew that this was unlikely to happen, he was still worried. Zhao Yunqi wasn't the only Yu Yao guard summoned by Yuandu. There were a few other Yao cultivators who were obviously on Zixian's side. However, they were all new Yao cultivators, so Lu Yi didn't know any of them. As for the other Yu Yao, Lu Yi didn't know any of them either. As the Rizhao Realm's guard, he had the right to summon the Yu Yao of the major spiritual islands to help him when he encountered some problems. Yuandu had taken action this time to make a big deal out of this matter. He wanted to let the world know that he wasn't seeking personal revenge, but was standing on the side of righteousness. On one side, Rizhao had come in person with 100 Yu Yao cultivators following him. On the other side, there was only Lu Yi and a few others. The two sides were separated by a defensive formation and were less than 100 feet apart. Lu Yi looked at Yuandu and said calmly, "What a powerful aura." I didn't know who had such a powerful aura. It turns out that it's guard Yuan Du who has come in person. I apologize for not going out to meet you. May I know the reason for your visit? Yuan Du only looked at him indifferently. Due to the angle, he seemed to be looking down at him from above. He didn't respond to Lu Ye's question at all. Obviously, he didn't think Lu Ye was qualified to talk to him. Beside him, Yuan Qing stepped forward and smiled at Lu Ye. Island Master Lu, we meet again. Back then he had seen with his own eyes how Lu Ye killed Lionheart. His heart had palpitated for a long time. Lu Ye gave him a feeling of lawlessness. He even dared to offend Yuan Du. Yuan Qing didn't get along well with Lu Ye. If Lu Ye wanted to kill him one day, how could he stop him? However, from today onwards, he didn't have to worry about anything. Yuan Qingjin didn't know what Lu Ye was thinking. Was there a hole in his brain? How dare he offend Rizhao when he was trying to make a living on the Vientiane Sea? Yuan Qingjin didn't know what Lu Ye was thinking. Fellow Taoist Yuan Qing. Lu Ye turned to look at him. Yuan Qing nodded and his expression turned serious. Island Master Lu, Lord Guard has come for an important matter. Therefore, I would like to ask Island Master Lu to open the defensive formation and let us in first. The defensive formation. Lu Ye tilted his head. That's unfortunate. A few days ago, the island's formation suddenly ran into some problems and can't be opened for the time being. Lord Guard, if you have something to say, you can say it here. In the face of Zhao Ri, the defensive formation might be a layer of protection, but how could Lu Ye casually open the formation to let others in? If he did, and the other party harbored ill intentions, Yuan Qing would be powerless to resist. Moreover, from the other party's attitude, it was obvious he wasn't here to talk to him. The defensive formation can't be opened. Yuan Qing's eyes twitched. He really didn't understand how Lu Ye could be so thick-skinned as to lie through his teeth. However, before he could say anything, Lu Ye said, "Or is there something the Lord Guard doesn't want to tell outsiders?" It was obvious that he was worried about Yuan Du and wanted to secretly play some tricks. Yuan Qing smiled. Of course not. That's good. It's rare for so many fellow Taoists to gather here today, so there are some things that need to be revealed in public and let everyone know the true face of some people. It was expected that the three-world island would close the formation, so Yuan Qing didn't care at all. As long as this matter was confirmed, the three-world island and Lu Ye would never be able to rise again. Bring him in. Yuan Qing suddenly waved his hand. In the next moment, Tu Yuyao escorted a figure to the front. Countless gazes gathered on the figure, and soon, cries of surprise rang out. Blood race. It's the blood race. Why did they bring a blood race member here? Could it be? Many people knew that there were blood race members hiding in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. However, the blood race members were very well hidden. Even Zhao Ri couldn't detect them unless he was at close range. Moreover, there weren't many blood race members hiding in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, and they hadn't stirred up much trouble. Most of them just quietly cultivated and collected some information. It was harmless, so no one paid them much attention. However, at this moment, a blood race member had been brought in to face the three-world island, even though Yuan Du had personally appeared. This inevitably caused many people to wonder. End of chapter. Chapter 1979. This blood clan member had obviously been tortured. His aura was weak, and his face was very pale. The insect and blood clans were hated by everyone in the galaxy. It would be fine if he didn't expose himself under normal circumstances, but in this situation he knew that he would die without a doubt, so he had no intention of resisting at all. The 10,000 Elephant Sea naturally had their reasons for sparing his life. He only needed to cooperate a little later and he would have a quick death. Under everyone's gaze, Yuan Qing pointed at this blood clan member and explained with a smile, "This bastard has been hiding in the 10,000 Elephant Sea for many years with evil intentions. A few days ago, the Lord Guardian discovered some clues and captured him. In fact, this blood clan member's origin was captured by He Yun from a blood clan realm, but outsiders didn't know, so Yuan Qing naturally explained. The Lord Guardian asked around and found out that there is more than one blood clan member hiding in the 10,000 Elephant Sea. It's just that these blood clan members are proficient in the art of concealment and transformation, so ordinary people can't detect them. Many people nodded at his words. This was something that everyone knew, so they weren't surprised. Yuan Cheng's expression turned serious. The insect and blood clans are the most chaotic in the galaxy. The 10,000 Elephant Sea is the gathering place of various galaxies, the center of the galaxy. How can the blood clan be allowed to do as they please here? Unfortunately, ordinary methods can't find these hidden blood clan members, but just because ordinary methods can't find them doesn't mean the blood clan can't find them themselves. At this point, he turned to look at the blood clan member with a cold expression. Don't you think so? The blood clan member immediately understood that it was time for him to cooperate. He didn't resist and said with a wooden expression, "That's right. My clan has a secret technique called the blood cry technique. When used, I can sense the presence of my clan members nearby." Right now, he only wanted to die quickly, so he was willing to cooperate with Yuan Du when the time came. He would choose the targets according to the agreement. The ones who died were humans anyway, so it wouldn't hurt him or the blood clan at all. In fact, he was quite happy to see the human race fight like this. It made him feel good to drag someone down with him before he died. The surrounding cultivators were in an uproar. Yuan Du's side had rushed to the three-world island with a blood clan member. More importantly, this blood clan member had said such words, which made the original fanciful thoughts become more and more suspicious. Could it be that the three-world island that had risen to fame in recent years? Island Master Lu, Yuan Cheng looked at Lu Yi with a smile. I wonder if Island Master Lu has anything to say? Lu Ye's expression was calm. What do you want me to say? Yuan Cheng was a little disappointed. He had thought that he would see Lu Ye's flustered look. Who would have thought that this guy's temperament would be so calm? At this point, Yuan Du's purpose in bringing a blood clan member here was obvious. He wanted to identify Lu Yi as a blood clan member. However, both Yuan Du and Yuan Cheng knew that this was obviously a false accusation, but so what? As long as this blood clan member pointed out Lu Yi, they would have a reason to attack. When that time came, the three-world island wouldn't compromise. If the three-world island dared to resist, they would be accused. When Yuan Du attacked, no one would say anything. This was an overt scheme, and it was an overt scheme that couldn't be broken in the face of absolute strength. It was true that the Rizhao Guard wouldn't interfere in the battles between the major spiritual islands, but killing a blood clan member wasn't a problem. That was why Yuan Du wanted to find a way to get Jiao Yan away. Otherwise, as long as she was on the three-world island, this plan couldn't be carried out. If that was the case and Jiao Yan came to confront him personally, how could he defend himself? Jiao Yan's temper wasn't good. If she came back and attacked him directly, he would have a bump on his head. Now that Jiao Yan wasn't here and the other guards didn't come out, he, Yuan Du, was the only one on the Vientiane Sea. Since Island Master Lu has nothing to say, then I'll say it. Yuan Cheng was still smiling. I've seen Island Master Lu fight from afar. Actually, I'm very curious about one thing. Since Island Master Lu is a weapon cultivator, how did you manage to cultivate such an exquisite blood Dao technique? Without giving Lu Yi a chance to speak, he raised his voice. Regardless of whether it was the battle against Bai Yu or the attack on Zixin a few years ago, Island Master Lu's blood sea technique was amazing. That level of blood sea technique isn't like any other secret technique of the blood Dao. It shouldn't be cultivated by a weapon cultivator. It would have been better if he didn't say this. Once he said this, many cultivators around frowned and fell into deep thought. Regardless of whether it was the battle against Bai Yu or Zixin, there were too many spectators. Lu Ye's blood sea technique was indeed impressive. Now that they thought about it, there seemed to be something wrong. Lu Yi of the three-world island was known as the #1 person under the Rizhao Guard. It was because he was a weapon cultivator that he killed his way through. After all, a person's energy was limited. Even those Dharma cultivators who specialized in blood Dao secret techniques might not be able to display such a level of blood sea technique. However, a weapon cultivator was able to do it. This was indeed abnormal. Lu Yi blinked. It's true that I'm a weapon cultivator, but I'm also a Dharma cultivator. Body cultivator. Sword cultivator. What's the problem? Yuan Cheng was stunned by his words. I didn't expect you to be so shameless. Don't waste your breath on him. Yuan Du impatiently urged. If it weren't for the righteous side, he wouldn't have created such a troublesome situation. However, if the Rizhao guard personally made a move, he would have a good reason to do so. Therefore, there were some things that needed to be done. Yuan Cheng's expression turned serious. He looked at Lu Yi coldly. You're a weapon cultivator, but you can display such a blood Dao secret technique. There's only one reason. Island Master Lu, do we have to be so clear? Lu Yi said, if you can explain it clearly, then go ahead. I'm all ears. As he argued with Yuan Cheng, his divine consciousness surged. In the three-world island, in the pill room, second senior sister had already blown the blue sea conch. The cultivators of the three-world island were retreating to the mermaid clan's territory. Since a few days ago, when Lu Yi felt uneasy, he had a premonition that something was about to happen. Since that was the case, he had already made arrangements. Right now, the most precious thing on the three-world island was naturally the cultivators on the island. Therefore, as long as the cultivators on the island were evacuated, it wouldn't be a big deal even if the three-world island was lost. This time, Yuan Du obviously wouldn't let the matter rest. Lu Ye's fist was not as big as his, so he didn't want to fight him head-on. It wouldn't be too late to wait for Jiao Yan to return and ask her to solve the problem. Yuan Cheng was rambling on, so he was happy to stall for time. Yuan Cheng looked at him deeply. As you wish. After that, he looked at the Blood Clan cultivator and ordered, find your clansman. The Blood Clan cultivator didn't say a word and immediately activated the Blood Cry technique. When the real Blood Cry technique was activated, it was actually silent. The user could easily sense the presence of their clansman nearby. However, Yuan Du had warned him before coming here. Therefore, the Blood Cry technique he used now was a little different. Under everyone's gaze, the Blood Clan cultivator's chi and blood surged. Immediately, a blood line stretched out from his body. It wriggled like a living creature and slowly extended towards Lu Yi. This bloodline was completely useless. Its main purpose was to make it easier for outsiders to observe. It was a direct way to let the crowd know that Lu Yi was a Blood Clan cultivator. Seeing the bloodline pointing at Lu Yi, the cultivators who didn't know the truth immediately exclaimed in surprise. Yuan Cheng's face was filled with pride. After today, there would be no more three-world island and no more Lu Ye in the Wanxiang Sea. According to the plan, the Blood Clan cultivator would identify Lu Yi next. But just as Yuan Cheng was looking forward to it, the Blood Clan cultivator suddenly revealed an extremely shocked expression. He stared blankly at Lu Yi and then at Ma Shangxi beside Lu. He had indeed used despicable means to frame the young man in front of him according to Yuan Du's instructions. However, he had also secretly activated the real Blood Cry technique at the same time. In the end, he was shocked to find that the young man he was going to frame was actually one of his clansmen. He had the blood of the Blood Clan in his body, and it seemed to be very pure. Not only him, but the other person standing behind him also had the same, and there seemed to be traces of a third Blood Clan cultivator on the island. This three-world island was a spiritual island occupied by a powerhouse of his clan. The captured Blood Clan cultivator was shocked. He had never expected such a ridiculous thing to happen. He met Lu Ye's gaze and saw that the other's gaze was leisurely and seemed to be hiding something. Many thoughts flashed through the captured Blood Clan cultivator's mind. His clan was suffering. Just like the insect clan, everyone in the starry sky wanted to beat them up. In this vast and bustling Wanxiang Sea, every clan had the right to have a share of the pie, except for the insect clan and the Blood Clan. Even if the Blood Clan came, they would have to find ways to conceal themselves and hide their true selves in the dark. Who would have thought that a top-grade spiritual island had been occupied by a powerhouse of his clan? If he caused the other party to be exposed this time, wouldn't he be the sinner of his entire clan? He had long been prepared to die. Death was nothing to be regretted, but he definitely couldn't harm his clansmen. Now that his clan had occupied a top-grade spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea, he would have the opportunity to start a prairie fire in the future. Therefore, he made a prompt decision. The bloodline that was supposed to extend toward Lu Yi turned in front of Lu Yi and landed directly on Yuan Cheng, who was looking forward to it. Yuan Cheng was stunned and turned to look at the captured Blood Clan cultivator. The Blood Clan cultivator had an excited expression and shouted, "So, fellow cultivator Yuan Cheng is actually a member of our clan. You hid it so well." The surrounding cultivators were in an uproar and exclaimed continuously. Yuan Cheng was dumbfounded. He looked at the captured Blood Clan cultivator in disbelief. "What nonsense are you talking about? Things shouldn't have developed this way." According to the original plan, the Blood Clan cultivator should have identified Lu Yi and he should have stepped forward to question him. Once the Blood Clan cultivator identified him, it wouldn't matter whether Lu Yi admitted it or not. But what was the situation with this Blood Clan cultivator now? Why was he lying through his teeth and framing him instead? How could he not know whether he was a Blood Clan cultivator? How could he be a Blood Clan cultivator? Moreover, they had clearly agreed on this beforehand. Inside the protective array, Lu Yi looked at the farce in front of him and thought, so this is the true meaning of the word error? Sure enough, there was no danger and no big deal. End of chapter. Chapter 1980. Lu Yi knew what Yuan Du was up to when he saw him bring a blood descendant. He was surprised by the blood descendant's betrayal, but he could guess the reason. The blood descendant must have used the blood cry technique and sensed his and Ma Shangxi's blood descendant's bloodline. From the blood descendant's point of view, he would never harm his own people. That was why he framed Yuan Cheng. This was the reason for the awkward situation. Yuan Cheng scolded the blood descendant with an innocent and angry face. The blood descendant was not afraid at all. He was going to die anyway. He could help his people hide better before he died. Yuan Du frowned and looked at the blood descendant. If his original plan was to frame Lu Yi through this blood descendant, he couldn't help but feel suspicious. The blood descendant's behavior was no doubt a cover-up. What was he hiding? Why didn't he follow his orders? He couldn't say that Lu Yi of the Three-World Island was really. Yuan Du's heart skipped a beat. He seemed to have discovered a shocking secret. But he quickly reacted. If the blood descendant did not identify Lu Yi, then what was he doing here? As the guardian of the Sunshine State, he could not do anything to the Three-World Island without any evidence. Otherwise, he would be breaking the rules. Especially this time, in order to show off his impartiality, he had purposely attracted so many cultivators to come and watch. This time, he had really shot himself in the foot. For the first time, Yuan Du felt that his identity as a guardian was a restriction. Suddenly, a fierce magical power surged. Yuan Du was shocked. He quickly turned around and shouted, "No!" However, how could the person who activated the dermic powers pay any attention to him? A figure charged out and punched the air. With this punch, the Blood Clan member who was tangled up with Yuan Cheng was blasted to smithereens. The power of the punch did not diminish at all as it slammed into the protective array of the Three-World Island. Visible shockwaves rippled out from the point of contact. The entire Three-World Island shook violently. "I told you to just do it. Why did you have to do all this nonsense? What a waste of time." Inside the defensive formation, Lu Yi looked at the figure in disbelief. "Hey Yun, isn't this guy dead? More than a year ago, he was surrounded and killed by a few Rizhao from Mount Thongzhen. How could he appear here?" However, the other party's appearance and temperament were clearly that of the dead Black Cloud demon Venerable. Moreover, based on his impression, the Black Cloud in front of him seemed to be much stronger than the one he had seen before. He Yun stared coldly at Lu Yi through the protective array. He sent a telepathic message to Lu Yi. "Kid, if you don't want anything to happen to Jiuzhou, you'd better surrender yourself." Lu Yi frowned. "What did you do?" He Yun snorted coldly. "Nothing much." At this moment, 2 great demon venerables and 8 lesser demon venerables, a total of 10 demon venerables, have joined forces to lead an army to the 9 states. They will arrive in 3 months. Ever since his Dharmakaya had fallen into the hands of the 9 states, He Yun had been thinking about revenge all the time. However, according to his speculation, Lu Yi had most likely obtained the inheritance of the Dao tree. Therefore, when he asked Zixian's army to move out, he himself came to the Wanxiang Sea and decided to take down Lu Yi personally. Attacking the 9 states was a safety measure. Because the inheritance of the Dao tree was only his speculation, he could not be sure. Therefore, the best plan was to take down Lu Yi and the 3-world island while taking down the 9 states. Then, no matter where the inheritance of the Dao tree was, it would not be out of his control. He knew that there were strong cultivators in Jianghu. Otherwise, his Dharmakaya would not have fallen. However, no matter how strong they were, Zixian's 10 Rizhao were mobilizing together, leading tens of thousands of troops. It was impossible that they could not take down Jianghu. Calculating the time, Zixian's army should be halfway there. After he took down Lu Yi, he would even have time to join Zixian's army and personally preside over the battle to see who had destroyed his Dharmakaya. Lu Ye's expression changed. Although there were several Rizhao from Mount Fengtuan in Jianghu, Zixian's force was too strong. Mount Fengtuan alone was unable to contend with Zixian unless the south and west also came to help. Even so, they could only contend with Zixian in the Rizhao level. When the battle started, the people of Jianghu would be plunged into misery and suffering. Seeing the anger in Lu Ye's eyes, He Yun transmitted a message. Of course, if you are willing to surrender and answer a few questions, I will immediately call back Zixian's army. Of course, this was a lie. Zixian's army had already been mobilized. Even if he was one of the 5 great monster lords, he could not interfere with the army's progress. He only said this to make it easier to take down Lu Yi. He could feel that Yuan Du had ulterior motives. However, in his opinion, Yuan Du was after the 3-world island itself, while he wanted Lu Yi and the cultivators of the 3-world island. Therefore, their demands did not conflict. You are courting death. Lu Yi looked at him coldly. He Yun snorted. No one has dared to speak to me like this for many years. The exchange of divine thoughts between the two only lasted for a moment, but this unforeseen event shocked all the onlookers. No one expected Rizhao to suddenly appear from behind Yuan Du at this time and attack so brazenly. Moreover, Rizhao's aura was obviously unusual. He is a monster lord of the monster clan. Someone with good eyesight recognized He Yun's origin at a glance. Monster clan. So, he should be the monster lord of Zixian. Is it monster lord He Yun? I remember seeing him once from afar when I was young. A monster lord attacking for no reason is against the rules. Didn't the guardians do anything? While the cultivators were discussing, 4 figures gathered in front of the Guardian Palace on the island of all manifestations, looking in the direction of the 3-world island. These 4 people were none other than Yuan Du, the other 4 guardians of the palace. Gu Shi of the Tianyan realm, Mu Qing of the Kunyu realm, Mo Wenli of the Illusion God realm, and Chen Xuanba of the Gaotian continent. Including the Yiyuan realm where Yuan Du came from, these realms were basically the most powerful in the entire Wanxiang galaxy. What is senior brother Yuan Du doing? Mu Qing frowned. As guardians of the Rizhao realm, Yuan Du had been planning something recently. Of course, they knew about it. Before Yuan Du left this time, he had informed them and promised that no matter what he did, he would not break the rules of the Wanxiang Sea. But now it seemed that Yuan Du's promise was bullshit. The outsider Rizhao had already made his move here. If this matter was not resolved properly, it would greatly damage the prestige and reputation of the Rizhao realm. It might even lead to a series of turmoil. Should we go and take a look? Mo Wenli asked. What can we do if we see? Chen Xuanba shook his head slowly. Do we help or stop them? If they helped, the reputation that the Wanxiang Sea had built up over the years would be gone in an instant. But if they stopped them, they would only be seen as a joke by outsiders. So, no matter what choice they made, they could only wait and see. They could only wait for Yuan Du to settle this matter so that the Wanxiang Sea's interests would not be damaged too badly. It's the 3-world island again. They are indeed restless. Gu Shi snorted coldly. His words seemed to be criticizing the 3-world island. The other Rizhao realm experts knew very well, Gu Shi had always looked down on the 3-world island. It was not because of his deep friendship with Yuan Du, but because the unparalleled island had been taken by the Tianyan realm behind him. In the end, The unparalleled island had fallen and the three-world island had risen. She had always felt that the three-world island had stolen the fate of the unparalleled island. That was why the situation of one spiritual island falling and the other rising was happening. If the three-world island did not exist, the matchless island might still be as prosperous as it was now. It could bring great benefits to the Tianyan realm. But today, how many people in the Wanxiang Sea still remembered the matchless island? He was happy to see Yuan Du attack the three-world island. Maybe after Yuan Du took over the three-world island, the matchless island that belonged to the Tianyan realm would have a chance to revive. At this time, outside the three-world island, He Yun brazenly attacked. Yuan Du couldn't stop him in time. Many doubts flashed through his mind. He immediately shouted, "This blood race would rather die to frame me. Lu Ye, you are indeed from the blood race. Show your true form." That blood kindred's previous actions were too strange. It was impossible for him to believe that Yuan Cheng was a blood kindred, because Yuan Cheng was his junior in the Yuan world. Others might not know whether Yuan Cheng was a blood kindred or not, but how could he not know? But the other party had clearly made such a decision in advance. He was undoubtedly covering up for Lu Ye. Yuan Du was 80% sure that Lu Ye was from the blood race. He didn't have evidence, but it didn't matter. He would first pin this big accusation on Lu Ye, and then he would have the right to do so. Although the process was not satisfactory, it was fine as long as the direction of the matter was not out of his control. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Lu Yi coldly snorted. After the insect and blood race suffered a great loss at the reincarnation tree's alpha origin stage, they jointly issued a huge reward for me. I believe many people have heard of the name Lu Ye from the Nine Heavens. How can I be from the blood race? Yuan Du was taken aback. Yes, if Lu Yi was from the blood race, then what was the matter with the reward? There were many people who had the same doubts as him. Many people knew about the reward issued by the insect and blood race back then, and also knew that the person on the bounty was Lu Ye from the Nine Heavens. However, very few people knew that Lu Ye from the Nine Heavens was actually Lu Yi from the Three-World Island. Now that he said it out loud, it naturally became a means to prove his innocence. Fortunately, He Yun's brain worked quickly. He knew that he shouldn't be entangled with Lu Yi at this time and should quickly take him down. He immediately sneered, "I have naturally heard of Lu Ye from the Nine Heavens, but are you really from the Nine Heavens? You are clearly from the Nine Heavens." He was certain that Lu Yi wouldn't dare to answer this question. As expected, Lu Yi immediately shut his mouth. While the two were exchanging words, He Yun's subordinates didn't stop. After a few punches, the entire three-world island was thrown into turmoil, and the defensive formation that had been accumulated for many years was on the verge of collapse. This was the power of sunlight. Let alone the defensive formation of the three-world island, even Zi Xian's defensive formation couldn't withstand such an attack. In comparison, Zi Xian's defensive formation was much stronger than the three-world islands. End of this chapter. Chapter 1981. When he sensed Yuan Du's arrival, Lu Yi had already pushed the power of the island's protective array to its limit, consuming the spiritual energy it had accumulated over the years. If not for this, He Yun would have been able to break the array in 2 or 3 strikes. Even at this moment, the array wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Lu Yi could clearly see the array's light curtain dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even small cracks flashed across its surface. This was clearly the result of the array withstanding an attack that exceeded its limits. Lu Yi frowned and sent a divine sense message to He Baichuan and the others beside him, "Go!" Yuan Du and He Yun had come with such ferocity this time that it was impossible for them to give up. Once the array was broken, everyone would become fish on the chopping block. Therefore, they had to evacuate Three-World Island before the array was broken. Receiving his orders, He Baichuan and the others didn't hesitate at all, turning around and flying down, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Over at the pill room, the door leading to the merfolk territory was wide open, and all the cultivators on Three-World Island were nervously evacuating in an orderly manner. However, There were many cultivators and the door was only so big, so it would still take some time for them to evacuate. Lu Yi estimated that before the array was broken, all the cultivators on the island wouldn't be able to evacuate in time. He still had to use the red talisman. Thinking so, Lu Yi no longer hesitated, his body releasing a bright red light as his aura rose rapidly. Red talisman? Yuan Du had been watching Lu Ye's movements closely. He had seen the scene of He Baichuan and the others leaving just now and could roughly guess where they were going, but he didn't care. All he wanted was to keep an eye on Lu Yi. In other words, as long as Lu Yi was still here, no one else mattered. Once he captured Lu Yi, the entire three-world island and even the merfolk territory would be his. But at this moment, when Lu Yi activated an unknown red talisman, Yuan Du was surprised. He knew that Lu Yi seemed to have a good relationship with the humanoid race, but he didn't expect it to be so good that he even had a red talisman. Just as he was thinking about what type of red talisman this was and what kind of power it would erupt with, Lu Yi suddenly shouted, "Combine!" As his voice echoed, the red light shot into the three-world island's defensive formation and fused with it. In an instant, the entire defensive formation turned red. From afar, it looked like the cultivators of the three-world island were covered in a layer of blood. The defensive formation that was on the verge of collapse under the onslaught of the black clouds suddenly became much more solid. "You're kind-hearted, aren't you?" Yuan Du looked at Lu Yi, having already seen through the power of the red talisman. It was clearly a red talisman used for protection, but Lu Yi didn't use it on himself. Instead, he used it on the defensive formation to increase its strength. This was clearly to buy time for the other cultivators to escape. But there was no point in doing so. "What nonsense are you spouting? What are you waiting for?" He Yun shouted in a low voice. From the moment he attacked until now, Yuan Du had actually been watching with the cold eyes of a bystander and even had the mood to criticize Lu Ye's actions. He Yun simply didn't know what Yuan Du was thinking. Didn't he know the principle of long delays being fraught with problems? The defensive formation here was about to be broken, but with the support of Lu Ye's red talisman, it was able to struggle at death's door for a while. If Yuan Du had attacked with him earlier, Lu Yi would have been captured by now. This undoubtedly displeased He Yun. As soon as He Yun finished speaking, Yuan Du took a step forward. Even at this time, he didn't forget to shout, "Lu Yi of the Blood Tribe, hiding in the Myriad Sea and occupying the three-world island. You harbor evil intentions. Today, this guardian will take you down and enforce justice on behalf of the heavens." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and pointed forward. This silent attack caused the barrier of light strengthened by the red talisman to tremble violently. Lu Yi couldn't help but take a few steps back. With two great suns attacking at the same time, the defensive formation wouldn't even last 5 breaths. It was time to evacuate. He didn't run toward the pill room because it was a bit far away. Moreover, the Azure Sea Snail's door could only be opened for a limited time. There was no aura left over there, so Lu Yi didn't know if the door had closed or not. If the door was already closed by the time he got there, he would have no tears to cry. Thus, he quickly arrived at the edge of a cliff. Below him was the pitch-black Myriad Sea. He had never worried about encountering too much danger on the Myriad Sea because he had an ability that no one else had, and that was to survive under the Myriad Sea. When he first came to the Myriad Sea, Lu Yi had thought that if he encountered an enemy he couldn't beat one day, he would jump into the sea to escape. However, he had never encountered such a situation. He didn't expect to be forced into such a situation at the late Yueyao stage. Lu Yi turned around and looked at Yuan Du and He Yun, who were attacking the defensive formation from afar. A cold glint flashed through his eyes. It hadn't been easy for the three-world island to reach this point. Under the rules on the surface, no one dared to provoke them. If nothing unexpected happened, the three-world island would stand here for 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer. It would provide long-term and powerful support to the development of the Jade Conch galaxy. However, rules were indeed meant to be broken. In the end, his fists weren't strong enough. He had lost Matchless Island back then, and now he was about to lose the three-world island. This made Lu Yi angry and helpless. He still needed to be strong enough. If he was strong enough, he wouldn't have to follow the rules set by others. At that time, he could become the one who set the rules. Not good. Yuan Du met Lu Ye's gaze. Although he didn't know what Lu Yi wanted to do, he instinctively felt that something was wrong. He couldn't help but increase the strength of his attacks. Under his and He Yun's fierce attacks, the defensive formation of the entire three-world island shattered like a mirror in a short time. Countless cracks spread and the power of the red talisman was exhausted. A loud crash resounded in all directions. The defensive formation was completely broken. Two figures rushed towards Lu Ye's position at almost the same time, their speed extremely fast. Lu Ye's expression was calm as he stared coldly at He Yun and Yuan Du, as if he wanted to remember their ugly faces deep in his mind. Then he was about to jump into the sea. But at this moment he suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the alchemy room. A vigorous aura appeared out of thin air in the alchemy room. This is? Lu Ye's expression couldn't help but change. At this moment, he couldn't help but think of the word, how, that the dice of fate had rolled out. This is really? Ma Bin had been in the merfolk territory for more than a year. During this time, he had been recuperating in the spirit jade vein. The results were obvious. Although he was far from fully recovered, the injury to his Dao foundation had stabilized and would not continue to worsen. As long as he continued to recuperate like this, he would recover sooner or later. But today, he suddenly noticed some abnormalities. In the direction of the celestial spiral palace, it had become very lively. It seemed that many cultivators of the three-world island had come here. In the past, there had often been exchanges between the three-world island and the merfolk territory, but there had never been so many people at once. At first, Ma Bin didn't pay much attention to it, but gradually he found that something was wrong. His divine sense was so powerful that it only took him a little investigation to roughly understand the cause of the matter. The cultivators of the three-world island had come to take refuge. Yuan Du disregarded the rules and joined forces with a purple jade demon venerable to attack the protective array of the three-world island. The three-world island was unable to resist and could only temporarily avoid the attack. This time, Ma Bin couldn't sit still. He walked out of the place where he was recuperating and came to the celestial spiral palace. After asking around, he learned that Lu Yi was still in the three-world island. The Baichuan and the others said with certainty that Lu Yi had already made arrangements and there was no need to worry about his safety. After everyone in the three-world island retreated, he would have a way to escape. Ma Bin suppressed his temper and waited in front of the palace. Waiting, but he didn't see Lu Ye's figure. In the end, he couldn't wait any longer. Ignoring the dissuasion of others, he stepped out of the palace and prepared to go to the three-world island to see the situation in person. Lu Yi had taken him in and given him hope of recovery. As a junior of the 9 provinces who he thought highly of, how could he just stand by and watch when he was in trouble? Although he wasn't in a good state at the moment, if Lu Yi was really in danger, he wouldn't have a problem protecting him. The moment he stepped into the three-world island, the protective array was broken. Lu Yi stood at the edge of the cliff, as if he was about to jump into the sea in desperation. Yuan Du and He Yun pounced on Lu Yi with lightning speed, as if they were going to kill him. Ma Bin was furious. The aura of a peak sunshine realm cultivator burst out and he roared, "You're courting death." Boom! The alchemy room shattered. Ma Bin turned into a ray of light and rushed to He Yun and Yuan Du. His spiritual power surged and wrapped around the two. He Yun and Yuan Du were both stunned. They didn't expect such a strong cultivator to suddenly appear in the three-world island. But soon, Yuan Du's face changed drastically. He exclaimed, "Azure Demon King Ma Bin? Why is this god of death in the three-world island?" And he jumped out at this time. "My life is over." Although Yuan Du had never crossed paths with Ma Bin before, he knew how powerful Ma Bin was. After all, it was all thanks to Ma Bin that he was able to take up the post of guardian of the Vientiane Sea. If Ma Bin had not forcibly killed Rizhao back then, the number of guardians of the Vientiane Sea would not have increased, and he would not have had a chance. He was focused on dealing with Lu Yi and the three-world island. He thought that the situation was under his control. But today, There were so many unforeseen events, and the current one was the most fatal. Even the Azure Demon King Ma Bin had appeared. This guy had been hiding in the Three-World Island all this time? But that's not right. Jiao Yan had been guarding the Three-World Island all this time. If Ma Bin was here, how could Jiao Yan not notice him? These two can't have a personal relationship. Ma Bin killed Ri Zhao of the 9 provinces. If Jiao Yan saw him, she definitely wouldn't let him go. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.